go around the table and see if any of our directors have any comments, any reports that they would like to give on meetings they've attended on behalf of the district, or if you have any comments that you think pertain to the district that you would like to make now that aren't on the agenda. Okay. Now we will go on to public comments. And this, there are a lot of people here. If you are here for a specific agenda item, that will be when you will give comments on that particular agenda item. Right now, I am looking to see if there's anyone in the public who would like to comment on something that is not agendized, that is not listed on our agenda tonight. I see a hand back here. Yes, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Peggy Ivy. I reside at 3066 Horizon Drive. And I attended the September 18th meeting, and I also turned my name in to the secretary to be notified of the next meeting. And I guess you had a meeting in October, and I didn't know about that. But at that meeting in September, the secretary was kind enough to pull up my property tax bill to state that I was not charged for sewer on my property tax. I'm going to correct that record. I have gone to the county of Santa Barbara, and I have here 19 years from 2000 to 2018 highlighted the San Ynez District, San Ynez CSD, that I was charged. And Dr. What's his name? The Hector Navarro, who happens to be the tax collector, he did confirm to me that this started in 1995 when I was annexed to this district, and that it only stopped last year, and that their records only go back to 2000. So I don't have the 1995 to the 2000. And your manager even stated that there was no way that this would ever be on property taxes. And it has been, and I was not the only family. I have a list of 26 families that this happened to. So we have been paying into this, and it was only when you guys annexed everybody else in with us 26 that you quit doing it.
Excuse me, can you tell me your name again?
Peggy Ivy, I-V-Y.
Okay, Ms. Ivy, I appreciate you making your public comment, and we will give you more opportunity to discuss this when we get to agenda item C, but I do appreciate your comment.
Well, I just want the record set straight, because it was stated here and put on record in the minutes that this didn't happen. And I'm not a kind of person that would get up in public and shoot from the hip and make a remark that I can't back up. Okay. And so I just want to make sure everybody knows that.
Yes, excuse me. Director D'Ambra had a comment.
Mrs. Ivy.
You can look at it.
Mrs. Ivy.
Sure.
Mrs. Ivy.
This is not this is agendized under number C. So.
Okay, we'll come back to it.
Yeah, if it's all right. Director D'Ambra does have a comment, and I'm sure other people in here do, but I do think this would be specific to agenda item C. Mr. Battles?
Well, I'm not so sure. I think that agenda item C relates to funding a sewer extension to serve properties in this area, and I think the issue being raised on Ms. Ivy is charges in the past for sewer service that may or may not be appropriate. So I think that's a different issue. It's being raised under public comments, so you can't discuss it. You can ask questions for clarification. You can also refer the matter to staff to look into it and bring it back as an agenda item. But this is an opportunity for her to bring the issue to the district's attention, and it's up to the board to determine how it wants to proceed from here without discussing or taking action on the item tonight. I think it is a separate issue from item 7C. Correct.
I can put a little picture on that.
Okay, would you like to go ahead now?
Mrs. Ivy, this goes back to, I believe, you were annexed 1995, 94, that area there, that time frame?
Yes, sir.
At that time, there was no sewers, there still are no sewers there.
Yes.
You were annexed into the area, and if I recall correctly, there was a fee that you would pay on your taxes because you were annexed into the area, a yearly fee.
That's correct.
Okay, and is that what you were paying?
Yes,
Okay, and what was that, $25, $50 a year?
well, yeah, it varies.
Okay.
It's all different kind of amounts. You can look at the bill, it went up and down, so I don't know how it was calculated.
And that should have been for everyone who was annexed in that, at that time. I remember I was at those meetings, that there would be a charge on your tax base, your taxes in November and April, that you would pay a fee for being annexed and into the district. And that was just a static charge that would appear every month until such time as sewers were ever put down the street. Is that how you understood it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That I was gonna be charged, and that's what I wanted to clarify. I was charged.
Yes, and that was, there should have been, everyone who was annexed at that time should have paid what you paid.
Yeah, there was only like 26 of us, but then there was no fees or anything when everybody was annexed. So how was that fair to us?
That's where I can stop.
Okay.
I don't know that.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with the annexation, but there is a SYCSD bond amount. So we have to see like what bond it was for and research it to see like what it was for. I mean, it could be for the building, it could be for some other bond.
I think we just need to direct your staff
Yes.
to
We'll bring
look
that
into it.
answer.
Yeah.
Yes,
But
okay.
But it was not for sewer fees or the annexation fees.
I don't want to quibble. I respect you, Ms. Ivy, and I understand the point that you are making. And we will discuss Horizon Drive on item C. And you can stop us or advise us at that time, but I do remember when we were discussing it as an agenda item, when these folks were here before, we talked about different ways for the general fund, the money we get from the county for property tax. Ms. Ivy said she had been paying into a fund. So it did encompass all these different revenue streams when we talked about Horizon Drive and how we could help these people. Okay.
So do you want to direct us to look into it and bring it back?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it a consensus?
The
Yeah, I
board
think it's a
consensus?
consensus of the board. Yeah.
Yep.
Does anyone object? I guess we're good. Okay. So we direct staff to look into that. Thank you. Are there any other public comments not related to things on the agenda specifically? Okay. Then we shall move on to the consent agenda, which is approval of the minutes of our regular meeting in October, approval of our special meeting November 13th, and then also our treasurer's dashboard, approved disbursements from October 12th through November 15th, and our profit and loss budget performance. Do any of the directors have any comments or corrections that they would like to make on the minutes? Or questions regarding the budget dashboard?
I make a motion to approve it.
Okay, so Director Beard has made a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do we have a
I'll
second?
second.
Okay, all in favor?
We'll do a roll call
Do a
vote.
roll.
Okay,
Okay,
so we have a motion by Director Beard and a second by Director Muller to approve the consent agenda as presented. We'll do a roll call vote. Director Redford?
Yes.
Director Beard?
Yes.
Director Jones?
yes.
Director Muller?
Yes.
Director DeAmbro?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, now we're gonna move to the action items. And the first thing we have is approval for budget to actual, or budget to actual for fiscal year ending 6/30/19. And that is item 7A. And the directors can see what we budgeted, where we're at now, and what we have in the balance.
Madam President?
Yes,
Can
Director
we
Deanna.
switch A, well, let's put C as the first thing, the Horizon issue?
You know, we have already commenced. Let me ask Mr. Battles.
There's not a problem doing that, there's board consensus to rearrange the agenda.
What about doing a presentation for the low pressure system before you go into that agenda item, because that's kind of.
Well, I would like to talk, get to the people first and to see, get their feelings, how committed they want to go, and then I would feel more comfortable finding out what their thoughts are, how they want to do this. I just thought that would be appropriate for the factor of time.
I agree with you, Director DeAmbra. The one thing that I would add to that is I think that the people who are here that are interested in the Horizon Drive and Janet Acres situations will be very interested
Okay.
in this presentation, and I think that will add to possible questions that they may have about possible solutions. I do not mind moving the budget thing to the end of the thing and just go ahead and start. I think your thoughts are correct. These people have come out, and I know that you've got other things to do. Although I like it when people come and see government in action. It might inspire you to get involved beyond just your property. So let's go ahead and put A at the, after. Okay, I don't want to be too tricky. What's the
Behind F?
easiest way to do this? We can put it just behind F, or we can put it after the Janet Acres and Quail Valley discussion. But F seems like that would be the easiest way to go. Let's
Either
just,
F, yeah.
let's just move A
not
to the end of the
mission
line. Is there consensus to do that?
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead now and go to item 7B, and I'm going to introduce there is a lady and gentleman here from Cigna, and they sell a low-pressure pump that may offer a solution that people will be interested in here that have had some problems getting a sewer hookup. So I will go ahead and turn it over, and I'm sorry.
Joe.
Joe. It
Yes.
was too easy, I was afraid to
Joe
guess
Cordero,
that.
Yes, I'll
Okay.
make it easy, so. And thank you for having me, I appreciate you, having us here. My name is Joe Tortorello, Natalia's over here. Natalia's actually my daughter, just so you know, so. We're a family company, I usually do this actually with my dad, who usually actually does the talking, and loves to spend time, talking about the families instead of the presentation, so. Since it was in the evening, I decided to come up so we can all get out of here. But, we're with a company called Cigna. We represent E1, or Environment 1 in California, Nevada, and Arizona. E1 is a low-pressure sewer system that is used all over the world. It's manufactured in upstate New York, so it's a U.S.-made product. And I'll go through a little kind of presentation about what low-pressure sewer is. And I'm sorry, yes, there are some handouts here if you folks are interested. And we actually brought some, bags, since we can't have, plastic bags, so, groceries and things of that nature. Can't have enough of those, so please, feel free to help yourself. You want to start, or there's a little kind of 1-minute video that may do a better job. Let's see if the video works on here. Is there sound? No sound? It's okay if there's no sound. Thank you.
In 1969, a team of General Electric engineers pioneered the concept of the low-pressure sewer system. The result was the Environment 1 grinder pump. E1 developed the grinder pump more than 45 years ago, and with more than 1 million end users daily, Environment 1 has Installation requires only a shallow trench, although trenchless technology offers another environmentally friendly option and is often used, as seen here. Unlike conventional gravity central sewers, which can use 24-inch pipe and require deep excavation, the E1 sewer system goes in easily and economically.
E1's low-pressure sewer system consists of a network of small-diameter pressure pipes and grinder pumps installed at each residence or business. The grinder pump station collects the wastewater, grinds the solids into small particles, and conveys it to a larger sewer main or directly to a wastewater treatment plant. The pressure-tight system virtually eliminates extraneous flow.
So, it's just a little overview of, that's the end of that video, right? Just a little overview. So, actually, the video is a little bit dated. We celebrated our 50th year this year. So E1 was actually formed in 1969. It was invented by General Electric, but General Electric didn't want to actually sell the product. So the 5 engineers that worked for GE got the rights from GE and formed Environment One. So that's kind of the background. So Environment One is a sewer system company. It's not a pump company per se, although E1 makes all the components for its own system. So the grinder is actually a significant part of it, but it's actually manufactured by do I have control of that? So a traditional sewer system, if you have a gravity system, requires that you basically excavate. So the farther you are from the point of connection, the deeper you have to go. The deeper you have to go, in terms of construction in an already developed area, the wider you have to go. So if you have homes that are already built, in order to put a gravity sewer in, you need to basically dig very large trenches. This diagram here kind of shows with a kind of a traditional system, which would maybe a larger system. LS stands for lift station. So what a lot of folks don't realize is that even in a gravity sewer, there are lift stations that are underground, maintained by the sanitary district. And so there are always pumps within a sewer system somewhere. In this particular case, they're actually managed by the sanitary district. Can we go to the next? I have control. I'm not used to that. So with the E1 system, basically everybody's pump, it eliminates having pumps within the system, allows the pipes to be installed shallow so they can follow the contours of the land itself. It allows you to do that by directional drilling or by trench. And directional drilling, essentially, if you have a street, let's say, you would kind of pothole one end of the street, pothole the other end of the street, and then it's a large drill that essentially goes into the hole and drills underground, and they can actually steer the drill, and the drill is steered until it gets to the other pothole. They connect the pipe on the other end of that drill. When they pull the pipe, or when they pull the drill bit through, it pulls the pipe through. Now the pipe is underground. So it allows the sewer main to be installed very, very quickly, and really minimizes the disruption to folks that actually live in the community. So I'll explain. This is the simple grinder pump system. It starts, can you grab a lateral kit out of there? It starts at the house itself. So your house is built just like it normally is. Your 4-inch line is essentially coming out of the house. My understanding is you folks actually have septic systems now. So those 4-inch lines would go into the existing septic tanks. This would essentially interrupt that, either before or in the same place where the septic tank is. And the effluent basically goes into the bottom of the system, and it essentially grinds everything up, grinds and liquefies. The smallest particle that goes through the grinder pump itself is less than 1/8 of an inch, okay? The discharge line itself is actually 1.25 inches, 1 1/4 inches. And it passes through, or goes to the end of your property line, where we install what's called a lateral kit. And this is actually being passed around so you can all kind of get an idea of what that is. That goes at the end of everybody's property. It's a ball valve, check valve, that essentially isolates you from everybody else in the actual force main system. There is another ball valve and check valve that's built into the grinder pump itself. That's a redundant one that isolates the actual property line. That is also something we use when the contractor does an installation of the infrastructure. When he puts the force main in, every property has one of those installed at the property line, which then allows for individual homes to essentially connect at various times. So everybody doesn't need to connect at the same time. So it actually provides a connection point where you can connect to the system, because the system is going to be live as soon as the first home actually goes active. This is just a little graphic, shows the influent going into the station, it grinds up, and then it actually goes out. So we do this in several areas. We do a lot of scenarios where we do a grinder pump station. If someone wants to build a house, they're on the side of a hillside. If there is sewer that's in the area, the sewer line may be up here, you're building the house at the bottom of a hill, it allows us to basically move the sewer up to the top of the hill. Septic tank abandonment is a huge area where we use a lot of these. California has a lot of areas where we have septic tanks. We've done a lot of projects in some very sensitive areas. One big one that's very close to here, Carpinteria. There's actually 3 communities within Carpinteria that are coastal adjacent, where we have actually put these systems in, and they've been operating for about, it's 2019. We put those systems in around 2012, 2013, somewhere in that time range. So those particular systems there have been operating for about 6 to 7 years. And then the third type of system that we do is we actually do entire communities that are new construction, because you can do it a lot more cost effectively if you're a developer, for example, because the street infrastructure is a lot more cost effective when you're doing small diameter pipe. I won't spend a lot of time on that. This is a little information about the lateral kit which is being passed around. The grinder pump itself, so we can kind of talk about this. So it was designed as a household appliance. Again, I talked about earlier the fact that GE actually designed this. It was their appliance division in upstate New York that actually came up with the concept. And so the idea of this is it's very serviceable. It's designed to be serviced, and it's designed to be serviced easily. So everything on the pump is a quick connect. So I think we have in there like an EQD, and then it's probably all on the quick connect. You want to pass around the EQD?
Yeah.
Can you loosen it up a little bit? So the EQD is an electrical quick disconnect. So the electrical sits at the top. So what you're seeing here basically, and maybe I can show you on this a little bit easier. So the grinder pump, and these get taller or shorter depending on where your sewer line is underground. So this essentially gets buried. So this line here kind of indicates what you're seeing underground. So what you see on your property is a 28-inch lead, basically. That's what you see. That's in the ground. So in order for us to service and access this, basically, it's all done from above the ground. Nobody goes into the station. This pump is actually called a pump core. And with that quick disconnect that we have, the electrical and the discharge valve right here, I don't know if you folks can see this, but the discharge valve is fixed. It's built into the station, so, thank you. So from standing above, we use a tank wrench that essentially closes the valve and then allows us to grab a rope at the top of the station and lift this entire pump right out of the station. So any service that's done on this can be done in the field. Or if a new pump has to be put in, the new pump can essentially be dropped into the station. The station itself is constructed of high-density polyethylene. Very durable material. It's a sealed system. They're all They're all pressure tested at the factory. And we actually recommend on the discharge line to actually use high-density polyethylene pipe, which in California is excellent because it has a little bit of flex. We have a lot of earthquakes and earth movement, so it actually moves easily. And it has a 50-year warranty, and it hasn't been around that long, but we think it's going to last longer than 100 years underground. So it's impervious to UV and things of that nature. The grinding mechanism, because everyone's always wondering, well, what's happening with this? And maybe I should, does it have the cutter wheel? So here is the cutter wheel itself. This is a 5¼ inch inlet. So I talked about the areas here. It's difficult to see on this. Do we have a cutter wheel and a shredder ring in there? I don't know if there is. But what happens is the inner wheel spins. It's a cutter wheel. And we have a shredder ring, we call it, around the outside. And it basically tears anything that gets into the system. And then this little gap here, there's little gaps right around here, is the area where anything passes through. This system has NSF approval on it, which is National Sanitary Foundation, and they have a series of tests that they have us put through on it. Frequency and we pass certain things through the system over a period of time. So things like glass bottles, feminine products, matchbox cars, which find their way into sewer systems, as the sanitary district can tell you. Usually they end up on the screens in the sanitary district. In the grinder pump station, it grinds it up before it passes it through. So that's essentially what happens. So if we go back to this slide, here's a kind of a cutaway where the effluent comes up here, it grinds it up, whatever makes it through here, and then is essentially discharged out. It kind of shows it here, kind of discharging out. And this is the check valve that I had mentioned is built into the station, and then there's another ball valve here in addition to the ladder kit that I can show you folks. And this gets into some technical stuff. I'm not sure that this kind of talking about the reliability. So here's the original stations that were built in 1969. Many of them are still in the ground today. Then we had another kind of version that came out in 1994, which was changed in 2007. The pump was changed a little bit. But the pump core we have today is backwards retrofittable, drops right into the original station. So it's all designed, so we have many of these pumps now that have gone into those original stations that drop right in. The only thing that we changed between this series and this series in terms of installation is there were a lot of changes made in this pump here, but one of the changes was what I showed you on the EQD was radial O-rings, because the idea is radial O-rings make a better seal than the electrical connection on the pump prior to 2007 was a flat gasket, so it was a square connection, but it's very simple for us to either have a little pigtail that we basically plug in, or we just change the end. And like I said, we actually do that in the field. So this is a very kind of quick overview of the system. Hopefully I hit all the fine points, but usually there's a lot more questions once I go through this, so I can open it up for questions if you want.
I would like to start, before we open it to the group, do the directors have any questions?
I have a couple.
Yes.
I do too.
Basically, it's a big garbage disposal, is it not? Is that what it is?
That was the original concept, was based on a garbage disposal, yes.
Okay, you have a team that you guys provide for maintenance on failure? This is not something a plumber would be familiar with. So do you guys have a team, or where would the consumer go?
Yeah, we do. The reality is, we have a pretty high reliability rate on this, equipment. So we average, we have a lot of them installed, so we know what our average is, and we average about 8 to 10 years between service calls. It's not a replacement of the pump, that's a service call. So we do have a team of trained service technicians. We have parts on our trucks where we can fix these in the field. We do have scenarios where there are plumbers that are called out to do service. Now, they don't have the expertise to do the service per se, but they can change a pump cord. So if a plumber acquires a pump cord, he can drop a new pump and and pull one out.
Electrical, what's the voltage on these? 110, 220?
We could do either or. The 240 is the more prevalent version. I mean, the electricity usage is going to be a little lower on the 240 volt system.
How many amps?
The full load amps is 8.
And I'm gonna open it up to, but I have a question here from Director Beard.
Is there a monitoring system to monitor it?
So, every station has a standard. There's a panel that has an audible alarm and a visual alarm, circuit breakers built into it. It comes with every system. There is the ability, we do have a remote monitoring system. That's an option that many homeowners opt for. That'll send a text, an email, make a phone call to tell you that there's an issue. It even tells you if the power goes off, which has been a huge thing recently.
That's one reason why I was asking.
Yeah, that has been, and we actually monitor that as well. That's as a fringe benefit, we actually monitor that for homeowners. So if there's we can actually see information. We can do a little bit of troubleshooting with that. We can see usage, start and stops. And so if we see that there's an issue, we'll actually call a homeowner and say, there's an issue with your system, and do you want service?
Well, just to piggyback on that question, if our power is out for 3 days, how does that affect the system?
So without power, there is no pump, essentially. There is, but your water usage is also lower when you don't have power. So you're not running washing machines and dishwashers and things of that nature. So, a typical family of 4, I think there is a slide, I think, in here at the end, because this is a question that comes up. There is a generator receptacle option, which is an option. So you can plug a portable generator into it, which would run this, system. This is typically a typical family of 4. Water consumption in the U.S., and again, it varies, is about 180 gallons, per day for a typical family of, 4. So based on the capacity that you have, with the station that you guys are looking at here, you're looking at, with the DHO 7193, it's about 4 to 5 days of emergency storage, essentially, is what you're looking at.
What's the volume on that cylinder?
This is the lower section of this is a 70-gallon.
Is that actual size? That's not obviously
No,
actual size.
this is not actual size.
What's the actual size of that cylinder?
There's slightly different sizes of it, again, depending on where the inlet line is. But it's 29 inches in diameter and would be about 6 to 9, 10 feet tall, depending on.
Okay, you can visualize that. Are there any other questions from directors? Then I would like to open it up.
I do actually have.
Okay,
So each one of these has their own lateral going to a main lateral.
Correct.
What's pushing the main lateral?
This pushes the main.
So,
So technically, this pump to get into, we can generate 185 feet ahead with one pump, or 80 PSI.
All right.
So this, we can go for miles with this.
All right. And the main is a 6-inch main or 8-inch?
Much smaller than that. So
Excuse me, I'm sorry. How many homes, like where we're looking at Horizon right now, behind Horizon there's many more homes. Are we just looking at Horizon only, or can we add to this system and still come, through those lines?
Yeah.
If we did an extension to other homes, and how many homes will it carry, or
So we could do hundreds, thousands of homes. It's not an issue.
on what size line?
That's where the design comes into play, because it's not one answer. Because what happens is, and we did a preliminary design for you, this layout was very simple, and I think it was a 2-inch
It was 2 inch.
2-inch main line. Based on the number of homes in the segment is gonna really determine what the size of line is. So the line size would change as you move down. So if you picked up homes, let's say, as you went further and further down the line would get larger the closer you got to the point of connection.
Right.
But the branch line, so if you had streets that were coming into kind of a main line, depending on how many homes were on that, they would be smaller diameter.
I understand.
And then when it hit that point, the line would transition to a larger diameter line and move from there.
All right, thank you.
And what does an average system like this cost?
A system, this system here essentially, you know, on a one-off basis, tax delivered is in around the $6,000.
And that's just for
Warranty?
the equipment?
That's just the equipment.
Okay.
Correct.
What do you warranty it for, 10 years?
It's a 2-year manufacturer's warranty on it. We average 8 to 10 between service calls.
Okay, I think Mr. Covell had a question.
Yeah, okay, I've got all the grandkids showing up for Thanksgiving. Okay, 20-minute showers is the norm, every shower's running, toilets are flushing, the washing machine is running, the dishwasher's running, the sinks are running. What's gonna happen? What's your flow capacity, capability?
Okay, so it's going to, let me step back here and I'll show you this particular station, we'll look at it. Your flow rate into the house is, limited in terms of what your incoming can, be, but essentially what's gonna happen is this station only takes 8 gallons to turn it on. So this is designed, the way it works is we're not amassing large amounts of fluid. We're discharging small amounts of fluid quickly and on a regular basis. So as this takes 8 gallons in, it's gonna turn on and it's gonna put 8 gallons out. Now if 8 gallons comes in and then it continues to come in, the pump will turn on and will continue to pump until it gets it down. So that's essentially what's going to happen. But it's designed to, the motor on this pump is designed to start once a minute. It can start 60 times an hour.
You didn't answer my question.
It's gonna pump it out, I'm not sure. You're asking, can you overwhelm the system? If
Yes.
you put, you wanna size the station for the level of home that you have, essentially. So this particular station that you're looking at here is rated at 700 gallons a day, a typical home. Now, if you have a large home where you have tubs that are 200-gallon tubs and you're going to use that regularly with other things, I would suggest using a slightly larger station if that's the case.
Okay.
Worst case scenario, if the fluid comes in technically that's greater than what the discharge is, it's going to put it into potentially an alarm condition and then eventually pump it out. So that can occur if you've got a mass amount of fluid, but it's an extreme condition where that would happen.
I have a positive question. It appears that because you're chopping everything up fine, sending it off to the wastewater treatment plant, seems like that has benefit to the treatment plant because it's already pre-processed, so to speak. And I was wondering if there's any benefits monetarily to a wastewater treatment plant that's being fed by this type of system.
I'll defer to them, but that depends on their method of treatment and the type of system that they have.
Jeff?
Yeah, depending on what type of screens you have up front. If you're set up for bigger, coarser screens, or just a screening mechanism like that, well, then it can potentially bypass it. If you have a smaller screen, like we have at some of our facilities, it's just gonna get caught on there and go off the dump. So, doesn't really provide any, and with what they currently have at Solvang, it wouldn't provide, it's gonna go to the dump. It gets screened off before it enters the treatment system. So, 1/4 inch solids or 3 inch solids, they're gonna head to the landfill.
One
Good
cost,
question.
one cost you have with this system that you don't with gravity is that you're paying for the power to run that. Whereas gravity just runs.
It's a very, very small amount of power. The amperage on this, I have a little, again, that, we did a little analysis that PG&E asked us to do, because they have a bunch of systems that we put in, and here's an example where you have, this is an annual basis, you're talking about, at 100 gallons a day, basically, you're looking at $10 a year to run that system. It's very small. It's, at 240, there was a question about what the amperage is. Full load amps is 8. This will operate probably with your head around where you're at. It's probably 5 to 5.5 amps. So
So you
it's
have
not a
8
lot
gallons
of
of
wattage.
fluid in your well. How many minutes approximately does that run to get it pumped out of the system? I mean, I'm assuming it keeps having to pump at some point to push material all the way to a main.
So 8 out, 8 into the line, 8 out of the line. That's how it works essentially. So there's nothing additional to move it along. So when we take 8 out of the tank and put 8 into the line, that moves
The
8
backload shuts
out
it
of
off
the
and
line
pumps
at
it
the
out.
end. Correct.
Question on that, each individual's parcel pumps to the next main, correct? I push mine to the next one, and then the next one picks it up. Is that how it works?
Not exactly. You're pushing into the same one. So it's gonna push the effluent into the force main.
Okay, so the last one, then that goes into the main, supposing the main is a 1/4 mile, 1,300 feet away. So the last property is gonna pay to push that 1/4 mile, that the others would only pay a small portion,
You're
right?
not going the whole way. You're moving 8 gallons, everybody's pushing the same amount of, whatever their effluent is going into the system. You're not pushing anything or paying any extra to move the,
Well, I'm saying when it gets to the main, and we have, your 8 gallons are at the main, where does it go from there once it's on the main?
We'll just keep, if I might, because I think that the important thing is, it's a positive displacement. Everybody has a positive displacement, so everybody shares that same 8 gallons comes in, no matter where it comes in, 8 gallons come out the other end, because it's positive displacement. It's not like a centrifugal or submersible pump where you have that greater head you're working against. Everybody's playing with the same
My next
head.
question though would be, how long does that effluent take to go a 1/4 mile?
I can't answer the specific question because it depends on the actual installation, but I provided an analysis that tells you what your retention time is. Because that's part of the design criteria, your pipe sizing, your length of line, and it's going to essentially tell you what that retention time is in there. I don't know if we have that. I mean, you have a pretty good turnover in that line. It tells you what your turnover is in that
Because
line.
if it sits there too long, it goes septic, and then it's more caustic to the rest of the system.
Correct. Which is a reason why we don't want large lines.
Right, okay.
That's one reason.
Mhm.
The other reason is velocity. We want 2 to 4 feet per second through the line, because what that does is scours the line, which prevents you from having to do anything to the line, because it's self-maintained. So,
Okay, are there any questions, additional questions? Oh, I see a gentleman in the back.
Yeah, we looked into this systems for different projects, and I was wondering, can you retrofit that to go into a septic system, like a tank already? Because I mean, all these clients here are, they have septic systems already, and if, our thought was, is if you could install it inside that tank, you would give you a couple weeks of time before if you have a failure.
you can do it. We have a different version of this that is a retrofit version. We don't recommend it. And the reason you don't recommend it is, I know instinctively we think the more storage we have, the better. The reality is, as we were just talking about, when the effluent is septic, it's very caustic. So whatever you put in there is going to attack the equipment. So your lifespan on the equipment is going to be a lot lower because you're going to have septic fluid in the tank, and that gas is going to really eat the metal.
I gotcha.
And that's the unfortunate part of that. So yes, you can do it, but you're going to have higher maintenance costs than doing that.
Okay, this gentleman, yes, I'm looking at you.
Do you have any ballpark figures on how much less expensive it is to trench for this kind of system than a gravity-fed system?
I would say statistically, it's about an 80% difference in cost. It's significant.
80% less,
More.
80% up.
It's gonna be, to do a gravity system is easily 80% more than doing this. It's significant, because it becomes exponentially more expensive. The further you go, the deeper you have to go. And like I said, the deeper, the wider you have to go. So there are so many more factors involved, from the guy that has to stand there with the stop sign to let you go. There's a cost involved with that. And when you have to close a street or shut it down, and the deeper they have to go, they have to shore. And when you shore, you have to shut a street, and prevents you from potentially plating it, which doesn't allow you to now drive over it, so it limits access and things like that. So it just becomes exponentially more expensive to do that. Not to mention the cost of the additional lift stations that may be required, because the sewer line may be above, the main line may be here, and then the line comes in down at this level. So it may not even be possible to do.
Yeah, I see a question in the back.
I have a couple questions. So one is the odor, is this vented or is it unvented? Or?
So any tank in California is vented. There's a requirement to have any underground tank. The unit self vents from under here.
Okay.
But we limit the amount of effluent that's maintained in the station. So there isn't really any odor. I mean,
Is there a carbon filter or anything?
you can add one, but there's no reason to do that. We do different types of treatment on this, I shouldn't say treatment, different types of methods in terms of venting this.
Mm-hmm.
The unit is designed to be self-contained, so there's a vent system that's built into the lid itself.
Right.
If someone wants the type of active kind of venting you're talking about, we can do a remote vent off the side of the station, and you tie it into, either run it up the side of the house and put a vent cap on it, or run it within the, building or something, vent stack.
And then, so it sounds like getting the affluent out of there is important, so you don't build up, the hydrogen sulfide is what goes after everything. So is it important to have that closer to where your waste lines are leaving the house, or, because, my driveway is in excess of 150 feet, so is that stuff gonna stay in a gravity system for any length of time?
No, it doesn't change.
Life of it?
It doesn't change the gravity system. I mean, I would say the advantage to having the unit closer to the house is that it can be more shallow, right? And then it minimizes the amount of your gravity line. But once it gets into the discharge line, it's in a closed system. So
Well, I'm saying beforehand, so if it's sitting around turning septic, it's generating all that hydrogen sulfide, then it gets into the pump, then it's gonna go after the pump.
But once it's in your gravity line, it's going right into the tank. So it's not gonna sit in unless your pipe is inverted.
Well, that's why I was wondering if your residual, that has any.
Your gravity line should have the proper slope so that it falls into the station, and once it's in the station does what it needs to do and gets it.
So you don't have any issues with hydrogen sulfide buildup anywhere in the low pressure side, the gravity fed side of it?
Unless it's, like I said, unless you have a flat or inverted line, no.
No, I was just, if you had it,
No, because it's gonna
there's
flow.
always something in
It's
there.
gonna flow. It's gonna flow.
Right, but because it is gravity fed, it doesn't, you have to have a lot of use to flush it, right? So if you're not using a lot of water, You could sit in there for days, right? I mean,
No, you shouldn't.
Yeah, I
If
mean,
you have a line that does that, you,
my math is, it's been a while since I've had to take an operator test, but a 2-inch line, like 500 foot should only hold like 80 gallons or
it's
so,
not,
right?
yeah, it's not that much, but.
Yeah, so 500 foot,
Yeah.
just one of these, if one person's home and turns it over once a day.
But he's talking about on the gravity line, on the 4-inch gravity line coming in.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's any residual that stays in there or build up the hydrogen sulfide.
With the new plastic pipe, we haven't seen that, because even like the line that would service this right now, and that's why we went with the bigger 10-inch, so it's laid flat like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing that a big pipe like that, I mean, it's just that bottom 1/8 type of thing.
Right.
It just-
Yeah.
It would just
Yeah.
dry in the bottom of it.
Sure.
Maybe it didn't.
Well, I just want to make sure there wasn't an issue with any.
No, actually, our biggest issue is with our own lift station, for the same thing, we run into that with our big lift station that pumps it. Most of San Ynez goes down to the lift station down by the casino.
Right.
And that one, yeah, back to those calculations, for that big one wasn't really done, so it only changes it down about 10 times a day. So that's the only place we really see it.
Okay.
You know, Craig can tell you specifically where there might be some little problem area.
Sure.
But then back to what you're talking about, they hit it with the sewer jet. You know, just so when we're aware of those, we dump some water down, hydro flush it.
Right.
Yeah. So with 14 miles of pipe, it's easy for us to
Okay.
know that there's only a couple areas that we dump some water down every once in a while. But good question.
And the gentleman next to you had a question
My
also.
question is, what if all of the houses kicked on at the same time?
Yeah.
You're running a 1.25 pipe,
Yeah.
whatever you're running up the street now, is it, so that's just a calculation of your design?
Exactly. Yeah, under normal circumstances, it statistically would not happen, but
Yeah.
certainly if the power goes off and all the stations basically fill,
Yeah.
what happens is the system will self-correct. So the farthest stations are going to thermal out. There's several thermals built into it. So you're gonna have higher pressure on those than you will on the ones that are closest to the point of discharge. Those are gonna be allowed to move, and then once those are done, it'll cascade back and they'll self-correct. So when that happens, so let's have a scenario, the power goes off, it's off for a day or two, the power comes back on, you're gonna hear an audible alarm. Everybody's alarm is gonna go off. And then as soon as it pumps it out, the alarm is gonna turn on.
Unless you have a generator backup.
If you have a generator and you plug in, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, it's got an auto transfer switch into it, so as soon as you plug in, it immediately switches over to the generator and plugs out. Yes.
I was just gonna say, what if the pipe gets plugged, now everybody, now it goes to the district, and they would be the ones trying to find where.
You're talking about on the force main?
On the main,
On the main line.
stuff, yeah.
It's not likely that, because this, again, it would be designed, properly so that you would have that, scouring to clear the line. But what'll happen, it's a PD pump. So what a PD pump does is it builds pressure. It's gonna build pressure and it's gonna push. So even if you have air in the line, it's gonna move that air. It's not gonna see that as, a blockage.
Yeah.
It's gonna move the air pocket.
And you also put in their provision that we can hook onto it and flush it, correct?
You would have flushing lines on your main anyway.
Kind of
That's what
that's
I was
Which would allow you
Yeah,
to
so
You
do
can
that.
flush, push it back to the access hole.
theoretically, yeah.
So,
but-
Theory, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not
We
likely.
have that ability from what I see in the
Yeah,
design.
and the size, I mean, is.
In
what
a
I was
built-out
saying.
system, you don't really have that issue. The only time you have the potential really for that issue to exist is if you're building a 500-unit community and you build 10 homes, and it takes you 20 years to build the other 480 homes. You're gonna have a lot more retention time because your lines were bigger, because you anticipated all this.
I got you.
You know,
It's
effluent.
drying out inside the main, I got you.
But in reality, even if you do get a little bit of, clog in that line,
Yeah.
it's gonna build pressure and it's gonna ultimately push through that line anyway. So.
One more question.
Oh, yeah, okay, and then we will go to the gentleman in the front row.
So traditionally, one would want to do the main line out in the front of the property near the street, but in our unique case, many of the septic systems are in the backyard. So have you ever had cases where you actually run the line in the back you know, maybe along the easement, is there, or is that just too difficult to trench in the back? Have you ever
I
done
mean, you
that?
can run the line wherever, but I would say, from the sanitary district's perspective, if you can hit, and I'm not, if you can hit two houses, you're gonna go in the middle of the two houses, not behind.
Well, all
But
the
that would
houses are
be-
lined up that way,
I-
but in the front, it'd be all right, but there's water and gas already in the front. So you have to avoid that, there's nothing in the back, so it just, to me, there's nothing there, but
If
I
we
just
get
don't know
taken
about
easement,
running- what's that?
it's a good question, but those lots weren't originally platted with like a 5 to 10 foot setback, as you'd see other places, so. If after we get through, I mean, the next item goes into some more of the details and numbers and direction to go with this, but
Right.
if the homeowners like to explore that, that would be up to that. If everybody wanted to do a 5 foot, well, and we'd have to ask about what size easement we really need, but if
You're
it's
not
just a
going-
5 foot easement, that could happen.
Right, you're
Just
not
the-
going that deep, right, the connection line?
But the reality of the line, of the
Uh-huh.
discharge line,
Right.
you're talking inch and a quarter,
Right,
high-density polyethylene pipe.
right,
Even if it's 150 feet, you can get that in one piece,
right,
and you can trench that. And
right.
it can snake around, so if you have to go from the back to the front, it's really not that big of a deal.
Well, it is in our situation, because we'd have to get permission with the district, and, you know, it's a different water board that controls that. For me, to make it simple, we just go right down the easement, because I don't have to ask anybody for permission, other than maybe Caltrans. But-
We don't have that.
Well, that's.
That's later.
That's the worst.
Right, well, I don't know, I mean, I don't know, it's just an idea. So you can put that station anywhere on the property, and once it's on the property, then the main line can go down.
The limitation for you is gonna be where the gravity line is. And
Right,
the station just gets deeper and deeper, the further you go.
but you can put that near, it doesn't matter, you just, you know, put it a fair distance from the home, but it doesn't have to be up by the street, right?
Correct. So like if your lot slopes back and your house is back here, you can put it way down here and then just trench that line back to the front.
Right,
Yeah,
just put it in its natural location anywhere you're willing to put it on your property.
but you know, then you gotta run electrical to it, but still not a big deal.
Right, right.
And this gentleman in the front row had a question.
Well, I could tag on his, but my first question was, one of your pictures showed this unit overlaying your current septic.
Right.
Do you have to pull your septic tank out?
You
Or
could-
do you just like cut the line off and stick this in front of it and then backfill your?
Exactly, so it's installation specific, so we kind of show that. It really depends on what your scenario is. I would say in most cases with a septic tank for safety, you don't want to leave an empty tank underground. So
Correct.
typically, if you're gonna go in front of the unit or side or pick a new location, you would typically crush the bottom of your septic tank and it would get filled with aggregate and then, so you would wanna, pump it out and then do that so that it's, so that's the other option is if you have limitations in space, or you have to go there, it's really break out the bottom of it, dig out the bottom. Because the septic tank is much larger
Oh,
than
yeah.
the unit itself. So you could go through the bottom, set the unit there, you don't have to take the whole, if it's a concrete set, you don't have to take it all out. Break through the bottom of it
Okay,
and
so.
fill around.
Fill it with gravel and or soil.
Exactly.
In our case, our septic is behind our house, away from the street,
Mhm.
which means we're gonna have to come down the side yard and to it. So this really has to go back in the backyard because our effluent goes out the back. It doesn't run. So my question is, you say 6K approximately for one of these units. How much per foot for installation?
Well, that inch and a quarter line, because that's the biggest concern that you're talking about. I mean, if you have a lot of hardscape there, that can get, it depends on what the house, looks like.
Sure.
But if it's landscape, again, you're talking about trenching a line, do we have an inch and a quarter line?
Oh, I know what
We
that
do.
is.
I mean, it's this big. And you only have to go to whatever the district requirements are. I don't want to say, because some districts, it's 18 inches and some is deeper.
It's probably 2 feet, right?
But you have to just follow whatever that minimum elevation is and follow the terrain.
And there's-
So that's a trench that's,
Right.
this wide and
Okay.
this deep.
And you don't have to worry about the terrain because it can go up and down?
Correct. If you hit a rock, you can go around it. Doesn't really matter.
And it can go under other drainage pipes.
Correct. It can go under if you have to go under and come back up again. We have lots of, I mean, we had a 2-acre parcel that a developer wanted to build 30 homes in a 2-acre parcel. They're 4-story, they were about $1 million a piece, and so the problem was the street, because it was a new development, so all the electrical and fiber optic and everything was in the street. So we had these massive vaults, and sewer came last, because everybody's concerned about their high-tech first, always. And what the only option was to drop underneath the fiber optic vaults, come up on the, that's the only way to do it. But they had no other ability to do sewer unless they did it in this fashion.
So, once again, approximately how much per foot for installation? And to install this puppy?
I can't give you a cost on that because it's gonna vary. I would say the pipe, it could be very inexpensive. If you have a laborer who could dig that, I mean, there's not much to that piece. Typically, we see in a typical installation, kind of start to finish, if you're doing a one-off unit, a contractor's coming in, he's doing a one-off unit, you're probably in the $4,000 to $6,000 range for him to do the installation between electrical and plumbing. I mean, but that's, if there's a lot of hardscape, a lot of rock, things of that nature, it changes year, so I couldn't tell you exactly.
And that's this is all in addition to whatever the district's gonna charge us for putting in the sewers.
Yes, that's a good point. And I don't know if there are any more questions, because we're gonna move into talking specifically about Horizon, so some more questions may come up. Did you have something, David?
Yeah, but no, thank you, Director Jones, because that's what I was gonna say, because moving on to the next item, some of those questions that Gary's asking, some of the others are, because we've got some cost estimates, the open cut versus the other, and that estimate kind of gets a lot closer to the estimate of running to everyone's house. You know, if you want to move on to that one.
Yeah.
Because I believe we have someone from Environmental Health Services. Okay, so Jason's here, we have Mike Kilborn back here, who's our engineer, and we have the pump people, so we can have that very broad.
Oh, thank you, Joe, but we're not done with it. Thank you for that, and yes, thank you for remaining, because I think there will be more questions.
So yeah, if you want to move on to the next agenda, that'd be very appropriate, thank you.
Okay, now we're going to move on to 7C, which is a discussion and possible action regarding funding and financing options for construction on Horizon Drive.
So that's a topic that we use for, because that's one that's still, at the end of it, we still need to decide. But with that, the very last part of the Horizon one has the cost estimate sheet of the different ones. And if I think we handed out all the, okay, yeah. So everybody in the audience has this, the director should have it. But Mike, if you would help walk us through this, since there's 3 parts to it, and then actually like the estimate of the low pressure thing, the number actually goes up when you look at the gross aggregate, but the district wouldn't be responsible for that, because then it's divided by the amount of homes with the pumping unit. So if everybody could help us walk through that, I think it'd be appropriate with that. And then we can conclude with back to direction, back to the committee to look, and I think that definitely after, and that's why we wanted to have this technology go first before so back to Director DeAmber's question, there could be greater interest, or there could be no interest, but I mean, at least it shows the citizens that we're trying to come up with another lower cost alternative to see if that interest goes up and that number we have yet to set gets to 50% or 75% or something. But then I think also as we walk through that, the district portion of it, the outlay goes down too. So it shifts some of those numbers around, but hopefully gets to a lot more finite numbers. What everyone's asking, what does it cost to get to my place? And what's that linear cost?
And the gentleman in the front row, I'm sorry, you told me your name last time.
Gary Waples.
Okay, Waples?
Yes.
Mr. Waples made the very important point that I hope everyone in the room understands, that we're talking about the cost of this unit is for the homeowner, and then other costs that are going to be associated. This is just to have this installed and get it off your property, right?
But does this lower your cost if we all have this
Well, that's why I want to walk through with the engineers. It appears that way initially because we would be installing that 2-inch line very similar as a homeowner. So back to not disturbing the whole neighborhood, not waking you up at 8 AM with heavy equipment and dirt everywhere. Because right now, I'd have to have Mike, our engineer, confirm this, but we're good 15 foot deep. So it would be a large trench by the time we get there. So if we can come up a little bit, that saves us money. And then, I think we can, I know we can install the 2-inch the same way. So that everyone's property, surely we could find, and we're talking about sometimes we can go 200-300 foot with it before it needs to surface. So.
Okay, so now, go ahead and walk us through, because I know that we will have input from directors and questions also. When we get to
So I'll just start with the staff report, but at the September 18th meeting, staff directed us to come back with some more bid-ready costs. And so with that, Mike Kilborn from Cannon Engineering, he provided us with an update to that, which you'll find at the back of 7C item here. And I'll ask him to help us walk through that here in a second. But we received those costs, and then in the interim, it came up to us that, we're only dealing with 20 homes. Back to some of the concerns you've already brought up, that it's not a huge amount of homes. We're not hooking up 500 of them. So once again, back to that same H2S problem and clearing the lines. And then back to all the utilities we talked about, here's an easier way to just get underneath them or avoid them and not have this huge open trench and disturb landscaping and various other things. So Craig's here tonight too. So Craig reached out to Cigna Mechanical, which they've already given their presentation on this. So after putting all that together, the low pressure system is a lower cost alternative we feel. It provides a more definitive cost by including the installation to the house, where the gravity sewer line only includes the installation of the property line. As you heard a minute ago, it's not finite, but it's a lot closer than when we're talking with a 4-inch gravity line. Because then we get into all sorts of other variables from each homeowners. With this one, we're back to there's electrical cost of electrician running it. That one we could get an idea on. But then you already heard that we're starting around $6,000 for this, and then X amount for the other cost of the line, which, as we walk through, the simple math looks like, as a gross number, just chopping it all up, it's like $15,000 a piece or so. That's not down to the variations, but once again, a lot closer estimate than I think we had before. But with that, then the Environmental Health Services is here too to answer any questions about timing, the need, or how the septic side of it happens, as we talk about busting through them or putting any of this. Any of the questions homeowners might have about that, or the timing, or any of that, we thought it was important to appreciate Jason and Larry to be here. But the guys from Environmental Health Services coming to answer any of those questions people have about their existing septic systems. And I know it always comes up about the different trigger things. Back to, are you forced to hook up at this time, or when does that happen? And then I think we talked about it earlier, we've reached out to our peer agencies, and I think one of the big ones was that after we started looking into it, it was like, oh, this is already installed down in Carpinteria. Reached out to Craig Murray down there, who's their manager and engineer, back to their soil conditions and their need for like the rain con. I think everyone's kind of familiar with where that's at, how it needs to pump quite a ways, and Sandy Lane and some of the others. Much more difficult installation, I feel, than ours. Ours is just pretty much clay. So, and then we get the recommendation later. I think the bigger thing was to proceed with this and have those questions for the homeowners answered and for the board answered. And then really, I think the goal is back to getting that direction as to have another meeting just with Horizon, meet with the subcommittee on what that magic number is, 50%, 25%, 75% commitment. And then I think hopefully this evening we have a better idea of what our portion might be. Because I think looking at these, it brings it down maybe by 2/3 or so to the district's cost. So from that, it's just a starting point. So Mike, if you would kind of back up to the beginning. Because I think one of the important things too that we left out there is that we are past the water lines, we are out of the Caltrans right away, and there exists a sewer line over in the county that's kind of headed that way towards Horizon. So if you do that.
So I can just give like a brief overview of where the sewers are, and then we can just kind of run through this cost spreadsheet, and I'll kind of help you guys understand how it's all broken down.
I can't hear you.
Sorry. Okay, does everybody have this map? Okay, so, the way the costs were broken down, I had a couple of different costs for a gravity sewer line, and then I had a separate cost, which is the one that E1 provided for the pressure system. The way the sewer would work in Horizon is you have a point right here in the middle of Horizon where all the sewer is going to drain down to the south to Highway 246. Okay? Going east in Horizon, there's like an 8-inch sewer line. This is the gravity portion I'm talking about. And then going west in Horizon, there would be a 10-inch section of sewer. Okay, so it's kind of broken down into two portions for the gravity line. There's the Horizon portion, and then there's this portion that would be going south that's in an easement. Okay, so let me switch to this next page. Okay, so that's what's depicted on this red sheet right here. Okay, this top cost is for the sewer that would be in Horizon. Now, as Jeff mentioned, this would be pretty deep. The way the sewer was designed was to be able to gravity sewer everything on the west side of San Ynez. So it's going to be roughly 15 to 20 feet deep in Horizon. And as Jeff mentioned, laterals would extend to the property line. And at that point, it would be on each homeowner to connect that lateral to your sewer on your property. The cost for the 8 and 10-inch line in Horizon itself came up to $285,000 roughly.
Question for you, if I may, as you go.
Yes, sure.
This is under ideal conditions, is that a fair statement?
Correct, yes.
15 feet, if I'm not mistaken, you have water at 4 feet, is that accurate?
Only when we have rain.
Okay, but
But I have water at 6 feet all the time.
okay, so what, is that accounted for in that number?
Yeah, so
You have
we accounted for
contingency?
depth in this cost, and we accounted for having to de-water.
So if you're-
Ideally, this would be constructed in drier periods, spring, summertime, not in the winter. But all in all, this would be, a significant duration of construction to actually install this thing. So, as Joe was mentioning, you got to have trench shields, and you're going down pretty deep, and you have traffic control. So there's a lot involved in actually constructing this, but we've tried to account for that in this cost.
So you have a contingency for things typically in that number, is that fair? Is that correct?
This is kind of a general, we gave a kind of average per foot cost with some of those contingencies. You can add an additional 10 or 15% contingency on top of this if you would like to, just for kind of unforeseen items.
So this could cost around 30,000, give or take, per home?
Are you combining these two?
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah. So going back to this spreadsheet here, the top part is just the section in Horizon itself. The second section down here is the sewer through the easement. That would be the sewer that connects from Horizon down to Highway 246. So that would be an additional $231,000. And that puts a gravity line from the district system up through the easement and in Horizon. So
So you're saying it's these two numbers combined?
combined would be the cost, yeah.
Okay.
So that's a little over $500,000.
It's $517,408.
Okay.
This doesn't include buying the easement though, right?
Correct, yeah. So there are a couple of unknown costs down there for alignment alternatives and easement costs. We don't know the exact numbers on those yet. That's something that would have to get kind of looked into as this moves forward. This is the preferred alternative.
Let me ask you, is this the most economical way? You're bringing it right down the middle? Is that more cost effective than going through the east side through an easement, or going up to Refugio and then down Refugio?
So 4 or 5 years ago, we did a sewer area study for the complete western side of San Ynez. We did look at going up Refugio as an option. The costs got astronomical. There's a lot of pavement restoration costs, Caltrans and county, and utilities in Refugio that made the cost more expensive than going this direction.
So in essence, this would be the most cost-effective way for Horizon to get this problem mitigated. But over the big sphere of things, we may have an issue, a more costly issue down the road to tie into other properties.
Yes, so anything that's upstream of here or further north of this area itself.
Well, and if I can, I wanted to, and Frank brought this up earlier, because up there, if we went with the same technology, we have other places of egress there. You know, so that back to what you're asking, this area, if Skyline Park wanted or something, and we went with the same technology, they would go north or east and probably connect to existing lines there. Because once again, it wouldn't be as obtrusive, and we're not going by gravity, because right now we can't hit these other lines by gravity in Skyline Park, and that's why, that's still one of the options to go all gravity this way, and hence why we still recommend getting the gravity to Horizon. But if Skyline Park came in and wanted to start doing something like this, you can see that they'd either go to the north or to the east. And so that then, in that scenario, you don't need the line up and down Refugio.
Well, wouldn't Refugio, if you had Refugio, in essence would be the middle of the west side, and you have Refugio split down the middle because you have Deer Trail on the other side. So you could pick up Deer Trail, Skyline, or anything on either side of Refugio, feed into Refugio, and then just come down to 246. That, to me, it just looks like logistically a lot cleaner than, looks like spaghetti up there.
Well, but back to the other, you got the big gas line on that side, and then the county says you're gonna redo it from curb to curb. That was our other big cost.
Yeah, and
It wasn't like you were just gonna cut it, they wanted us to redo the whole road slurry from one side to the other, so it cost went way up quickly.
Yeah, and there are utilities in Highway 246 that the sewer cannot go under.
Well, how far apart would they have to be from those current utilities? I would guess electric.
It's a crossing under issue, so to maintain gravity, we'd have to go up and over one of the utilities, which raises the sewer profile, which means we can't get all those other houses way at the northern end of the system.
So in essence, that's the most efficient way, is to go east to get south?
I have a question.
Yes, just, if it relates to what Bob said, it'll help maybe answer the big question.
Why couldn't we put a pump station down on Refugio like we have down the Chumash to get over to break the depth?
Oh, those are good questions, but tell us what one of those costs.
Yeah, I imagine they're not
So
cheap.
there is
Yeah.
there is a lift station now with the Golden Inn, that retirement community over there. I think that one probably cost in excess of
It's $750,
$800,000.
Yeah, so might as well budget $1 million for one.
Yeah.
And again, even when we look at some of these other areas, that's, because years ago before, with Jan Nate had him do one on that, if you start taking out those lift stations, they were $750,000 5 years ago when he looked at them, so. But good question, but yeah, they're really pricey. Because now you get them on the public scale, whereas this is private, so, it's great for the homeowners. We open it up and all of a sudden it's prevailing wage and it's built to withstand a magnitude 12 earthquake and 2 days worth of storage and generators.
I think this is great. I like that solution. But I hear what Bob is saying and Frank, and it's a question that I have, because when I look at this map, I know a lot of people who were annexed in during the West Santa Ynez Annex, and there is absolutely nothing in the works for them or plans for them to get sewer anytime soon.
Well, this is part of that, because once again, I think it's extremely important. I want to thank Environmental Health Services again. Prior to, maybe Frank was on the board at the time, but 5 or 6 years ago, we went to Environmental Health Services and said, well, we know we have a problem, we've studied it, we have a problem, give us I'll round it up to $150,000 to study this. And so on our website, there's a link, but there's the master plan basically for this, that Canon did, we looked at all of that. And it did an excellent job, because initially it was like $9 million, I think we got it down to, at the time, kind of an idea of like $3 or $4 million for those lines. And now we're seeing these options to bring it down even more, but we looked at what you're talking about there, is that how will we serve everyone as time goes along? But just as time goes along, now we've run across this technology, and it would be just as easy to cross here with your trail and pick up these folks. And so this site could do the same thing and pump up there. So back to, we do have a bigger plan that was provided for us in that study. That there's a link on our website, and we can provide copies if someone really wants one.
Okay, so, but on the back page over here,
Okay, we can talk about that.
Yeah.
So we're talking $500,000 and change for the gravity system. Flip over on the back of that, and there's a price for the low pressure system. Most of those numbers came straight from me but we're looking at $322,000 roughly. So that cost right there actually does include this pump, I believe.
it does or doesn't?
Does.
Does, that's item
But
2.
this is assuming that you're just sticking the pump in the front yard, so there will be some additional homeowner costs if your septic is in the back. You're gonna have to set the pump in the back and run the piping up to the front yard like we were discussing earlier, so. But that number does include the pump.
And that works out to about 18,000 per family.
Yes. Yeah, so you're looking at a savings of $200,000 for swapping the low pressure system out with the gravity system.
With that number, that doesn't, there's kind of a massage there, because this low pressure system takes a substantial amount of maintenance over time, and that's a cost that isn't reflected in this number here. Basically, if you have the hard line or the clay line, it's done. You pay your monthly bill. There's really not much maintenance unless the system backs up, and typically that wouldn't be your responsibility. But the low pressure, that's I could see that being overtime maintenance, electrical maintenance, and the grinder maintenance. So that's something that you as homeowners should consider. It's cheaper at the beginning, but over time, does it balance out? What would be the best thing for you folks individually?
This gentleman has a question.
So, you said approximately 10 years, 8 to 10 years between service calls. What kind of service do you have to typically do at that 8 to 10 year? Replace the pump, replace the grinding wheels?
No, it's not typically replace the pump. I mean, it's difficult because there's so much variability in what happens, because it's a question of, how someone uses it, because there are different kind of conditions. I can tell you a replacement pump is, about $2,600 is a replacement pump. So that gives you an idea on the outside if you have to replace the pump. Again, it's not something that we are going to typically do in a 10-year period. We typically look at about 20 years to say the lifespan on the pump itself. The stator is the wear part. This is a $100 part, basically. This is the wear part in the, pump.
Good.
It's difficult because in some communities, it depends on water chemistry, it depends on the installation conditions, but in some cases, we look at, because we have a lot of these installed over a long period of time. You could be in about an average of $25 a year, and in some communities, we're in, $50 a year. When you talk about, on average over the lifespan of the equipment. So it's difficult to say, but that gives you an idea of kind of the range of where we're at.
So do you have any figures for MTBF and MTBR? Mean time between failures and mean time to repair. So if it goes down, is it out a day? Is it out in 5 hours?
Oh, in terms of service for us to get there, I mean, it's typically, it's the sewer business. So it's relatively quick. We know a homeowner's out of commission, it's relatively quick. I mean, it's typically within a 24-hour period that someone gets that. I mean, that's.
And you're saying 8 to 10 years, that's your MTBF.
Yeah, that's all right.
There's a couple of questions. Do you want to go ahead and address those before you
Sure,
proceed?
yeah.
Okay, first this gentleman and then you, Ms. Ivy.
My question is for Joe. The service, you talked about the pump. Now, what's the cost of having the guy come and install the pump? Like, the whole entire thing, you know, like the pump is $2,200, but is that including the guy to come?
Oh, for a technician to come out, you're saying, do that?
Like, let's just say, the worst case scenario, the pump dies.
I think of what's this, service call with tax, because you have California tax, it's in around the $3,000 range. 3,200, 3,000.
So for every 10, $3,000, $3,500. Now, the second thing would be is, can you train the district to be able to do the service calls instead of having you guys come from LA or wherever it is?
Oh, absolutely.
You know, that would be a service that you guys could do.
But that becomes a question of whether the district wants to do that.
Well, yeah, I'm just bringing the idea.
Yeah, and that's up to them. I would tell you in the case of Carpinteria, they are a rare exception, where they actually do maintain the equipment, but they also own the equipment and they maintain it. So their agreement, and it all depends on how that's all structured. In most cases, 97% in California, the district does not get involved with that. They don't have the resources for that.
Well, we are saying is, and it's, you know,
Yeah.
an hour from everywhere,
Yeah.
so.
And the problem becomes, I have to tell you, and I know this is a challenge. I mean, again, our guys are very much like the Maytag repair guys, because I get this question when one person has an issue and they say, why don't you have someone here in my rural area? Well, the problem is, I can teach a guy, but it'll be 10 years between he'll have to actually use the skills, and then they forget it, or they leave and they go somewhere else. But, I mean, we always provide the support to the district or someone to do a change out. A pump core from us, we stock all this equipment. So everything we ship is overnight, even a pump core. So you order a pump core, you know, by 4 o'clock, you will have it the next day, no matter what. So there are plumbers here that do that for homeowners. We don't advocate that because they don't have the expertise, and sometimes they get into things they probably shouldn't get into. But that is an option. It's always an option.
Okay, Ms. Ivy had a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that after waiting for over 25 years for sewer, I'm not interested in having a household appliance that has a 2-year manufacturer warranty on it, or that it's going to have alarms that's going to go off, or that I have to call and have someone to service it. I want my sewer problem to be over and done with, and not something that I'm going to have to contend with all the time. I don't want that, and I will not do that. That's just what I want to say.
No, I appreciate your point of view.
Is there extended warranty for your pumps?
Yes. We can do an additional 3 years, up to 5 years.
There's a question in the back.
Yeah, my concern's been about the easement that you guys are gonna be looking for if we do the gravity. Well, do you have to get an easement either way through,
At this point, with what's presented before, yes, there's one easement left there, yes.
through, I don't know what the address is, but.
Any of the properties, one of those adjoining properties to the north.
Right,
Actually,
so what my concern is, I was talking with a neighbor, is, as I understand it, if there is an easement, it can't be gated, right? Like, it has to be accessible to you guys all the time, right? Like,
Well, we've been looking into boring a gravity line, doing the same thing, so that we don't disturb the top. Ideally, we want that, but this isn't an ideal situation where we've come at the sewer problem 40 years after the fact. So we're looking at that alternative too. That it's still a gravity, but we put a manhole on each side and bore a 10-inch line underneath everything, so we don't disturb it.
all right,
So
so the
we-
property owner can maintain their fences 'Cause
That's our
my-
intent, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Cause yeah, that's a huge
I-
sensitive issue.
Huge, because I was thinking like, it's basically gonna be like a walkway from the 246 to our nice little cul-de-sac,
Yeah.
like,
And actually that's, I think included in the bottom, there's some additional bid items, but that is definitely one that we've been looking at for exactly that.
right.
That where we're at kind of that road, you dig a big hole and you launch a 10-inch pipe or so that goes underneath everything and then comes out and horizon. For exactly that, so we don't take out any trees, we don't even do anything like that. And then back to the same sort of failure rate, so we don't want to see that thing for 100 years, so nobody can do it. And in theory, there would be an overlying 10-foot easement or so, but there wouldn't be like a 30-foot construction easement. And yeah, as far as we're concerned, if we do that, we don't need to take all that out. Because there shouldn't be any other connections there, no points of failure, so, yeah. 'Cause that's usually a great question, thanks for asking.
Yeah.
'cause-
I think the main thing about an easement too is, like you said, we're not moving any fences or anything, everything's all established out there already. All that district needs is space to go in there and fix something if it ever breaks. So just don't build a shed on top of it or a new house on top
pool,
of it.
no pool.
As long as that space is kind of maintained, then yeah.
And I think one of the other ones, and then that's why we invited environmental services, that back to what are the other trigger points? Because we hear a lot of, well, we're not gonna do this, we're not gonna do that, and invited them that, well, if you do nothing and there's no sewer line there, what's the timeline, what's the procedure next? You know, because I think that's the unanswered question that everybody keeps asking. That's where we've been prompted getting a lot of the calls we've gotten, and some of the other people in this room that are working through out-of-agency agreements and stuff. So if Jason, if you could fill that blank in as to how you're enforcing them, any of those speculative timelines, or just how that process works through the inspections, and because that's all really new to everybody with the new LAMP program.
So that,
Is it?
Jason Johnson, San Barbara County Environmental Health. 2012, the state water board, which is the overall agency that administers the state wastewater program, passed their state policy, which basically mandated either following their strict policy, which basically outlaws dry wells, is very specific in what's allowed, to allowing local agencies to have a local area management plan, which we've had since 2015, and that gives us leeway, but with that leeway are other requirements. So if you had if you're served by a dry well and you're under 5 acres, you're going for supplemental treatment to replace that dry well. So just ballpark estimated numbers, replacing your septic tank, you're looking at probably about $8,000 to abandon and install a new tank. To put in your dry well in, you're probably about $10,000 per dry well. That's not including supplemental treatment. Supplemental treatment anywhere from probably $20,000 to $40,000. It has electrical, it has 6-month, basically 6-month maintenance time periods. So you're paying a contractor to come out and inspect it, potentially service it, because you're getting moving parts. You're having water quality tests to ensure it's actually meeting the water quality standards that it's required. You have a 5-year operating permit, because you're going to be having reports and water quality tests sent to us, so we can ensure that it's actually meeting that water quality objective. And this is all basically mandated through that state policy. And the agreement we have with the water board to have variance from that strict state policy.
So what does that mean to me?
So you're on a 1 acre-ish parcel.
You're a dry well.
You're on dry well, so say your dry well fails. And your homes were built in 1960s. So you're now almost 60 years into your system. So it's at or past its lifespan.
Yep.
So your tanks, I know there's I think a tank that has about 1/2 inch, 1 inch thickness on the top. It could cave in. The code is 2.5 inches because we don't want it caving in. The hydrogen sulfide from the anaerobic process of a septic tank or an industry on-site wastewater treatment systems is eating away at that concrete. So eventually it will completely eat away and you'll have a void and thus the safety hazard, which is why 2.5 inches is the minimum. Your drywall is no longer taking effluent, so you have to replace the drywall. So you're having a new drywall put in, you're having a supplemental treatment system put in. So you're potentially looking at $30,000 to $50,000 installation cost, plus an ongoing operating maintenance agreement with a contractor who's certified by the distributor or manufacturer to service it. So it's their cost every 6 months a year, plus electricity to power it, and pay on system. There's various loads on it. So I don't have exact figures on how many kilowatts you're using per day.
My question revolves around, hypothetically, if my dry well has failed and I need to do all this, I've sort of heard in the background that because we're all in this process, that the county's not enforcing any of that at this point in time?
I'm not aware of any dry wells failing. Or no one's, we haven't got reports. I know people use the Y because when it rains, you have 4 foot, 6 foot deep groundwater, so your system doesn't work.
Correct.
And so that's why we're not chasing everyone down. We're hoping that we can get sewer, because long-term sewer is the better option versus every homeowner putting $50,000, $60,000 plus dollars into their property, have flushing toilets, and be able to take showers and baths at their own house. And plus then each homeowner has to maintain a system. Our objective is protection of public health and environment. We want to protect the water quality because you're drinking that water because you're on groundwater. So all that load goes into the groundwater, even if it's that first water eventually goes down. So that's one of our reasons for wanting sewers, because it's a better quality treated water versus your standard system.
I would just add to that. I'm Larry Fadden, Environmental Health Services Director, and this is a question that came up in the course of the whole project in Los Leos as well. If your septic system fails, you have to fix it. And if it failed today, you'd be faced with a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 repair bill. If we get to a point where there's a specific plan that's underway, that's working with the district, we know that there's an end game, people have made a decision, the commitment's there, and you have a failed septic system, we're gonna figure something out to get you through. We're not gonna cost you $50,000 to throw away next year. I mean, that's stupid.
And worth a lawsuit.
Yeah, and so we would, but it's just stupid.
Yeah, it is.
So, I mean, I would way rather people putting the money into the sewer system, and if we have an immediate thing we need to fix, that's the place where we would say, never mind all our policy, we'll exercise some flexibility there because we have a long-term solution that's coming up in a year, 2 years, whatever. But absent a plan and a commitment, then we have to fall back on our standards.
And I know there's a house somewhere in Horizon where the tank, I think, is a 1/2 inch thick. And we made some concessions to fence it off, block it off so that it isn't someone drives over it, someone steps over it, and you have potentially death.
Hot tub?
Yeah. So we know that is there, we talked with the homeowner, we made that concession with the hope that we can get something moving forward on the sewer, because like I said, we don't want to, once the code is, if you're within 200 feet of sewer and sewer is available, we can't issue a permit. You have to connect. If you have something that needs a permit, we can't issue a permit, it goes to where you're connecting with the sewer. So we know water levels and everything. Protecting the groundwater connection is the best option. So that's why we're making this concession, hoping that we can get sewer in a relative time frame, so that that homeowner doesn't put $10,000+ into their property and doesn't want to connect to sewer, because then that cost for running sewer past them isn't covered. So that's.
And we ran into that just the other day with you guys. You didn't grant us, because we were wishing to put another new tank in, and then sign an agreement with Santa Barbara or whoever, so that we could, you know, if they did, you know, is that something, the option that you guys would, like, some kind of legal thing that, so if you did, you know, you wanna get the system up and running, obviously, it's gonna take a while to get the sewer, put a new tank in, but what the email I got back from you guys was, is that as soon as we put the new tank in, then you wouldn't be, a problem anymore, and then,
You'd void out of agency.
If you're out of agency, it's different, because you don't have that
Yeah.
availability that would be
Alright.
annexed property.
there's gotta be some way to be able to, like, temporarily, you know, sign a, agreement with, in lieu of, you know, we're gonna put a new tank in until that's done, and, you know, and abandon it or take it out or whatever.
The issue with the out of agency is you would approve for an out of agency based on a health and safety thing. So once that new tank's in and the system's no longer failed, that health and safety issue's gone.
I don't know, well, he's just, you know, a gentleman here in front, just said, you know, we're working with, this, you know, kind of, so we don't spend $60,000 on an advanced treatment system, and so that's what, you know. That's my question, is why, you know, you're saying one thing and then doing another.
The difference is, for the Horizon, it's annexed into the district.
It's already annexed.
I got it.
It's already annexed in.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
We're planning on our
Okay,
own.
you're on your own,
Yeah.
okay.
The point is, if there's a specific plan with timeframes, financing, everything's figured out, so we know that this is gonna happen. We can talk about flexibility, but talk is cheap.
Yeah, we have
So-
a
so-
problem because
yeah.
we can't hook onto the Caltrans.
That's why you're in a unique situation that I can't make that same kind of commitment.
With this kind of system, there's workarounds, so we'll wait for the Horizons done, then we'll get together.
And then you may be in a situation that's.
Yeah, with this kind of system, I think if we could go down the easement, all the homes of Janet are right there, boom, 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 then we wouldn't have to mess with the street or anything. I mean, it'd be so easy to put that, was it 1.5 polyethylene line?
Yes.
Yeah, we just run down the back of the property, all 3 houses are lined right there.
Well, I think for Jason, because that's that key missing part, the option to do nothing probably doesn't exist anymore. You know, we're throwing out the sewer options that we have jurisdiction over. I appreciate Environmental Health Services coming and explaining the other component and what that cost is going to be, you know, and then you still end up with a treatment plant in your backyard.
Yeah, that's
You know,
what you're getting down
you
to.
get your own little treatment plant and your costs are ongoing and you have to maintain that just like we maintain treatment plants. But there you have to contract with another operator, you know, so.
But the solution for Horizon Drive may be different than the solution for Jannon Acres or some of the other things we're talking about. And this specific agenda item is addressing Horizon.
Yeah.
So, did you have
Any
more?
Questions on the cost or?
Look, you know, just looking at this, you got $10,000 in traffic control. You know, seems pretty expensive just like that. I mean, I know I just think that this could come in better. Just looking at those two, $10,000 for traffic control. Guy holding a sign.
Sure.
That's normal. That's, I guess,
I would say the hope is that it comes in better than this. Conservative.
I would have thought, if I wanted it, I would have put it in labor somewhere else. That doesn't set well with me for the folks. You know, I see that and I
But we're
go,
a cul-de-sac.
pardon?
We're a cul-de-sac. Horizon Drive's a cul-de-sac. We don't have no traffic except us.
Yeah, but you got the safety of the workers.
Yeah, you still have laws that we have to abide by.
And here, let's talk one at a time.
Yeah.
So because, yeah, we can get excited about this stuff. I'm just thinking back to when the folks from Horizon were here earlier and we talked about the cost of the study and we approved up to 50,000 and it ended up being a couple thousand. So there's just so much room in these numbers. I understand what you're saying, Director Guillen.
Sure. Yeah, and this isn't a hard set bid or anything from a contractor. This is just an estimate that I came up with.
How close are you usually when you come up with a number, do the contractors come in right there?
I've seen big swings in contractor pricing, so I'm usually somewhere in the mid to lower portion of where the bids come in, so, I mean, if we're estimating $500,000, you might get bids, I mean, maybe 420, 450, all the way up to 600,000 or 700,000, so, just depends on the contractor and availability and what number they want to throw at it.
Okay, so where we're at right now with Horizon is, we have an estimate on what it would take to get a main line in, correct? And we have a suggested way of going less expensive, and then we can also talk about if we do the clay pipe thing. So where are we, Jeff, in giving these people an answer? And this is about what it's gonna cost, and this is about the time frame. Where are we with Horizon?
We are back to what is the what funding mechanism does the board want to utilize? I think we're at the point that if the financing wasn't an issue, that we could go forward with one of the two options, and that would just be a question of, and some of it was a timing issue too, you know, how immediate is this? You know, if it's more immediate, I would say that the pressure system is probably gonna be quicker. You know, if it's not, well, then back to timing of the year and some other stuff, we could go the other route. So we're ready to put both those options there, which you have here. You know, here are the costs. What would the citizens prefer? You know, if they want to go all gravity, we can go that way. And then we meet with the subcommittee and say, and establish what that threshold is before we move forward. You know, but we're at that threshold. Is it 25%? Is it 50%? How do you want me to collect that? Go door to door and have them sign a commitment? There's still that question of what is that commitment? But it hits some of the conversation tonight. You know, now you hear that once a line goes in and your system fails, they're going to need to connect. They won't be issued a permit to upgrade their septic system or anything. They would need to connect at that time. You know, so you have different variables that we're learning this evening that would go into that equation. So on the one hand, if the sewer line goes in, probably within a normal, and that would be an EHS question, but they probably don't have it off the top of their head, but you know, how likely are those homes to fail over the next 10 or 15 years versus then the ones that want to connect as soon as it goes in? You know, does that get us to 75%? Don't know. That's the feedback that we need from the citizens.
Out of the people here, how many of them are willing to connect right away?
How many parcels are there?
Yeah, how many parcels are there? Not.
Good way to rephrase.
Yeah.
How many parcels?
How many parcels are there?
So out of the
one vote, one hand per parcel.
Just Horizon?
Yeah, just Horizon.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Where are you in that area?
Quail Valley.
6.
Oh, you-
So there's 6 on Horizon.
6 out of the 21 right now.
Okay, and that wasn't any Quail Valley there, that was, so there are 6 people on Horizon out of 23?
That are here.
17.
That are,
17.
That are here.
How many
Yeah.
different parcels are here from Horizon?
Right.
The next question.
Yeah.
Are they not all from Horizon here?
No, we have some quail and some Chandon.
No, well, they're not every parcel is represented here tonight.
And I'll tell you who is represented here tonight.
Yeah.
For the most part, they're people who are very engaged in this topic. So whatever we decide, we will probably find out that other people are gonna get engaged when they find out, oh, what? I'm getting this?
Yeah.
So, but you're the people who are being proactive, or you're the people who feel like you're really close to being forced to make a decision. So I'm trying to make this move forward. I'm interested. Oh, okay.
I was just gonna comment, at your last board meeting, you took action to form an ad hoc committee to develop a recommendation for a policy
Yes.
regarding what percentage of the property owners do you wanna see in favor of a project like this before the district will move forward. I mean, in any case, the district is going to take the lead in constructing the mainline extent, well, under most scenarios. You could have a, privately constructed system that the owners all pay for, but that's probably not a very likely scenario. So likely scenarios, the district's gonna undertake the project, and then ultimately the property owners are gonna pay for the extension. To the extent that the district is advancing the cost of the project, it's gonna get reimbursed over time, and the district needs to be concerned about how quickly it's gonna get reimbursed, and that depends on how many people support the project. And so I think that was the reason for setting up the committee. And so I think one decision point would be, what is that threshold gonna be? And once you know what that threshold is, you can determine as best you can what level of support there is, and that may answer the question for you as to whether or not you're gonna go forward with the project.
No, I understand, and that's, I was, Mr. Redford and, Director Redford and Beard are the committee, so I would like to hear from Director Redford and Director
Well, I
Beard.
think we should hold another meeting or hold a meeting and with the residents and the ones that don't come to the meeting, we're gonna have to knock on the door.
I think we just go knock on the door.
Yeah.
Skip the meeting part, just bang on the door.
Yeah.
Okay, so right now, the committee doesn't have any answers or threshold at this
We
point.
don't at this point.
Okay, so the next step would be for the committee to find out what level of interest, support, and then determine, and make a recommendation.
So I might not be clear on that, but is it the committee's charge to recommend a policy that the district only move forward with the mainline extension if there's X% in support? Or is it the committee's charge to determine what the level of support is?
I think those, when I presented that, both play into it. We want to provide you with everything you need here, but we also have a responsibility and to get that money back for future streets, the street across, Horizon, Stadium, and down the road. So we don't want to, if you need it, we're going to be there, but we need a minimum, and that's what the committee was supposed to put together. What number can we live with minimally to get you guys to sewers and us not jeopardize our funding for somebody who may come in from another street?
The folks that aren't represented here may not be that interested in it, but I think that they should know that if they do have the failure, that they're gonna be,
You're gonna be underwater.
Haven't you gentlemen sent out
Yes.
notices stating that should they fail, to everybody that's on a wet well, that should they fail, they're looking at considerable amount of money, or is that, do you guys publish these new rules, or do they just find out when they fail?
We got notices in Janet, we sent out to everybody.
We have done some kind of targeted outreach when it's coupled with, we haven't done some countywide, but when we've usually engaged in this kind of process, when there's actually some momentum for something happening, we want people to understand the consequences of choices they're going to be making. And, people can make informed decisions ideally. But there's not a whole lot of point in that. If you're out where there's no potential for any kind of sewering, other than always telling people to maintain what you've got, because when it fails, it's gonna get expensive.
Right.
It's like replacing a car today. It doesn't cost what my 88 Volvo costs.
Right.
I don't
Thank you.
believe there's anybody on the street that's not.
What was that, sir?
I don't believe that there's anybody on the street that has no problem. They're all having some degree of problem.
Okay, Director Redford.
There's one other benefit that the sewer district needs to look at, and that gives us an extension, a place to hook to extend our line if we do Horizon. And that's an added benefit that we're not looking at if we did install it. Say we only did have 6 people, but that opens up.
Maybe. The way that's set up on Horizon, that's not accurate. Horizon is an isolated, is that correct?
No, but it takes us to, all I'm saying, Bob, is it takes us to Refugio Road.
Or close to it.
Yeah, very close to it, where we could keep extending up towards Deer Trail.
Typically, it's not gonna work on Refugio.
No, you're correct. We can get all the way over to almost where the condos are.
Right.
And still be about 6 foot here.
Right.
So
you could use a low pressure system to run all that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that is an added benefit to the sewer district, even if we don't get 18 people or 18 homes.
Okay, taking that into account now, you have to weigh that with the amount of people that do want to sign up, because, so you can maybe give that another 5 or 10% when you come up with the number. Okay, so, because there is future benefit.
Right, there's big future benefit though.
But that
It's
doesn't do us now.
No, it doesn't do us anything at the
So-
moment,
so
you're
we-
correct, but,
yes.
but it's something to take into the
Yeah,
picture.
and that's what your committee
Right.
should calculate.
Right.
Yes, and I think that's an important point to make, and that was my concern. I represent the ignorant public. I don't know anything about sewer systems, and a lot of this stuff is very new to me, and I'm learning by serving on this board. But I want to make sure that we're doing this in an efficient manner, so we will be able to serve homes in the future, and we don't irresponsibly do something that solves a problem short-term, and then we are in financial straits down the road. And I think everyone on this board shares that concern.
When I look at Horizon, I look at this piece of line as a key piece to serving the rest of that area. Because where are you gonna get it? And right now, we have people that want it.
Yeah, it makes me excited to hear you say that, because,
You're the committee. It's in your hands.
No, it's not in my hands,
No.
I'm just saying my opinion.
no, your opinion and Director Beard's opinion, I like where you guys are starting and talking, and it makes me feel hopeful, and I don't have a home on Horizon, but I just get tired of not making progress, and I want to see some action that makes sense. Yes, sir.
Just doing the math, you said 23 homes on Horizon?
18.
17,
Okay,
I
well, at
think.
23, I just, I didn't know.
I gave the wrong number.
60,000 apiece for advanced treatment, it comes out to $1.3 million if everybody had to go to, the new system for a septic. So, I mean, if there's numbers in there, is it worth not doing it, is what.
Good way to look at it.
Pay me now and pay me later.
Yeah.
Pay me now, sometimes pay me twice later.
$600,000 to put a new sewer system, new sewer line in, that's half the cost of putting in, advanced treatment.
Right, I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
but if people replace their septic, if the county allowed that, then the district would not be spending, making that investment. But I agree that it's an investment in our infrastructure in the future. Yes, sir.
I think the core issue is people don't wanna do things unless they're incentivized. And right now, the big flaw in all this is people are not required to inspect their tanks. This is the honor system, so people are like, oh, if I inspect it, that could be $50,000, so they wait for it to fail or whatever.
17 years. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then that, so for us, people that are trying to make improvements and, trying to move on with life, we're handicapped by the other people that aren't incentivized or even required, but yet we got to live to all these standards where these other people, who knows what's going on with their system and who knows where the affluent's going because probably hasn't even been inspected in 20 years. So if the county really wanted to help us, they put in all these wonderful regulations, they would say, listen, you're on a 2-year cycle, mandate, or 4-year, some reasonable cycle, if you really want to help us, because it just puts everybody at disadvantage that's proactive, so preaching to the choir here.
We'll just push it down the line for you guys to
Yeah.
make a decision on putting them in on
Director D'Ambro.
Let's do something, okay? There's an issue, let's mitigate the issue.
Mm-hmm.
We're really that far apart. We just need to find a number that you can accommodate over time and that we can live with, that, hey, we're not jeopardizing our reserves. We'll get you guys what you need. So let's just focus on doing that, coming up with a number as soon as possible, special meeting if that's what it takes, where the committee comes up and says, hey, this is what we want to do for you guys, and maybe you guys could shoot the breeze with your neighbors who aren't, hey, what's going on? This is the best thing to do. It's you buy the best once, you only cry once type thing. Okay, and then it's all done. You'll have it. We want to help you. We're just, like I say, I don't think we're any farther than a couple inches apart. A couple of questions to get answered, and.
No, you're right, exactly, and Director Redfern just started. He was appointed to this seat a month ago, and Director Beard was elected less than a year ago. But I have so much confidence in their ability and their engagement, and they have just whatever you two need to do together and report back to us at our next monthly meeting, and we will have this, we'll have taken a step in the right direction.
If I could just, if you can take a percentage of the cost that you guys are comfortable with, that protects us and accommodates them, that's great, or you want to use X amount of parcels out of the whole, whatever you guys think is the best way to do it. You know, but let's just get this done and move on. They've got other things to do. They've been here a couple hours, plus the other meeting. Let's just, let's do it, period. Let's get going on it.
Do you have a list of homeowners' phone numbers?
Wendy took that at the last time they gathered.
I know, well, because, you know, us saying, okay, we're gonna come in on Saturday and knock on the door, not everybody's gonna be home. We need to.
You may or may not need to knock on doors.
Right.
The two of you need to come up with what makes sense as far as how our district is gonna proceed with this investment in our community and what makes sense.
But we also need them to make a decision on what type of system we're gonna use, because we're shooting in two different systems.
That would probably be part of your recommendation.
I want to get a consensus of what the homeowners want.
Yes, so that is the task that I am charging the two of you with, that this board is charging you with, is to talk about the different variables, get some input from the folks who are gonna be affected, and come back to the board with how you think is best for us to proceed, so we actually will proceed.
Yeah.
If I may, Madam President, can we expedite the 30 days, just cut it in half? 2 weeks? Could you guys do that in 2 weeks? Is that possible?
Well,
Is that
you've
probable?
got Thanksgiving next week, I'm gone that whole week, so that only gets me 80, but.
I think a month, I know it sounds like we're just pushing it a month, but from where we were a year ago, folks, we're kind of flying along. So I'm sorry to ask you to wait another month, but I think that's a reasonable amount of time for our committee to get back to us on this. And I can tell that our entire board wants to work with you and with the county. Obviously, we need a solution, and I think that these two gentlemen are going to do a really good job.
Could we get a form, just a basic form saying yay or nay, 2 systems on it?
We can get
that we could hand to the homeowners with Lori or something.
Yes, you guys are gonna work with staff and make sure that everybody who is going to be affected is notified and that you're able to reach them and that they are able to contact you. And that might be part of what you guys devise for how you're gonna come up with your best recommendation.
And so we hopefully, Madam Chair, should have a decision next meeting? So we will get you going?
We will have a recommendation, and we may or may not take action on it, but I feel optimistic, just based on what I'm hearing here tonight from you guys and from the directors. Yes, go ahead, sir.
I'm sorry, I've been listening to all of this all night long. First off, your committee has a responsibility to every one of us, people who are homeowners, to come to us with the options that you are proposing and get us to vote on it, and then go from there, instead of deciding it upon yourself.
Exactly right.
As our committee, I would not make the decision myself. I want to hear what you have to say.
It needs to be made by the homeowner.
Right, and that's why I want to outreach to you and speak to every homeowner and find out what they prefer.
Precisely, and what the options are.
And what the options are.
Exactly.
This is part of the picture here. The majority of this board is brand spanking new because voters did not feel that they were being properly noticed on things. And I think that's why I'm so optimistic. The people sitting at this table
I was in the last annexation and didn't want to be annexed in. So now they have to deal with me.
I found out about sewer through the Los Olivos thing and wondering what's going. So we're all people who came to this board, for the most part. We are new to the process, but what we want is to make sure that things come from, well, I don't know if it's a good analogy to say from the ground up since we're talking about sewer, but we don't want people to just come and I'm the enforcer and you've got an illegal sewer system.
I can tell you
Yes.
the way this board, I can't speak for the last board, but this board, we're not gonna shove something down your throat and tell you this is the way it's gonna be. We're gonna get a consensus and then make an informed decision. Yeah.
Yes, but we hear you. We
Yeah.
hear you. Yes, Miss Ivy.
Jason, you wrote this letter? I have a letter dated in 1997 from the Regional Quality Water Board that basically says the same thing that you said from 1997. And I walked the community of Horizon Drive, and I got the petition, and I had over 50% of the people on Horizon Drive, and I still have their signatures in my file, that wanted the sewer, and it was never acted upon. So my question, and those people now, some of them have died, the homes have been sold.
If you can get
and they've
50%,
turned
I can
over,
guarantee we'll put sewer in.
and all that kind of stuff. Huh? I'm sorry.
If you can get if we can get 50%
I can
agrees
give
to
you
sign up.
50% because those that are dragging their feet,
Yeah.
I will give you photos
Yeah.
of them having illegal extensions and running it out on the ground.
Yeah.
And I've been a good neighbor,
Yeah.
and I've tried and tried over the years to be a good neighbor, but I've had it. I've absolutely had it, and I'm publicly stating that if this doesn't go forward, Peg Ivy's gonna bring a lawsuit, period. I've had it. I've done everything I know to do.
There's incentive right there.
But I will get you 50%.
Mark?
Wait, Gary.
Gary, names.
We
Okay.
can turn to Frankie. When is the next meeting?
Our meetings,
December 18th.
yes, and they're the third Wednesday of every month at 5:30. So our meeting time doesn't change from that. Third Wednesday, 5:30. And so the next one's gonna be on the 18th. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, Gary. All right.
You'll expect to hear from our committee in the next.
Yes, and it is, I'm going to go ahead and move on from Horizon Drive because I think that we know what we're doing next. And I think we're going to go ahead now and move to the next item.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll let you guys go ahead and exit. I know you want to stay. We're going to, yes, we still have Jan and Acres and Quail Valley, which are going to be related but different. Okay, well, you can contact Wendy in the morning. I'm going to go ahead and move on. We're going to go number D, update, discussion, and possible action on providing sewer to the properties out of agency agreements in Jan and Acres. So that's back row, folks, right? Okay, and some of what we've talked about was of interest and you participated in that discussion. But now we're going to speak specifically because Jan and Acres is in the Solvang sphere of influence. And I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to do the summary.
Okay, well, I'll read the summary on this, which is in June of 2019, the Board of Directors approved an out-of-agency agreement for 2501 Janway, and then June of the same year, the Board of Directors approved an additional one at 2401 Janway to provide sewer service for both properties due to both properties having failed septic systems. Both property out-of-agency agreements have been approved by LAFCO. After reviewing the paperwork at Caltrans denied the plan for private sewer line connecting to the public sewer line in the Caltrans right-of-way due to several issues, speed limit being one of them in the area. Caltrans will not allow multiple, and Caltrans will not allow multiple private connections to the district sewer line within the Caltrans right of way. However, Caltrans recommended to us during those submittals and appeals and what have you, we took it up a couple levels there too, I didn't include that in there. Recommended the district submit plans for one public sewer main extension from the existing district sewer line up entranceway to Jannon Way. So once again, we had a similar thing, asked Cigna Mechanical to complete a cost estimate on a similar thing for the entire area, and then we looked at just the properties with the out-of-agency agreement, and it came to like $136,000, which includes the cost of the main line extension and a manhole of entranceway from the district line. Obviously, that main line would potentially then service the whole area later. It could. I mean, so same sort of math that we'd be dealing with potentially, or probably with Horizon. And so once again, the homeowners could enter into a cost reimbursement agreement with us, so that if others did it attached to it, well, they would be reimbursed with us. So our current recommendation is to allow us to enter into that mainline extension or agreement and work with the property owners to help facilitate the design, bidding, and construction of the mainline extension to install a main line with a low pressure sewer system providing for over property owners. I mean, that's our recommendation. There's also the alternatives of, you know, maybe with board approval or so, go back with Caltrans and then see if we can continue to, because we have confirmed that further up there, where there's motels and the churches, there are laterals that come out. There are individual laterals that come out of the main line and go to the property line. You know, the district set those some time ago. At this location, back to Jannon Acres, it just wasn't thought through. So I mean, or thought through, it didn't happen there. But so it's a little bit of both. I mean, there's other options still on the table. Our recommendation was just that okay, well, there's just a couple of property owners, they're not in our sphere of influence, but they have this immediate problem. You kind of heard it discussed this evening that if they fix it a different way, well then they're no longer a out agency agreement. Now that's a LAFCO thing from my understanding, that they don't fit that criteria. No longer the public health and welfare type of thing, and then they're back to just being on their own. But right now, we entered into that out-of-agency agreement with them. They have that. It's just the Caltrans won't let us privately, or let them privately access that. So we've just come back with a recommendation that, okay, well, let's see if we can do a mainline extension, and then using this technology, they can just pump over that.
Right.
So with that, back to the board for discussion.
So doing the mainline extension, you say it's gonna cost about
Yeah, that was just one of our rough estimates. I believe if you look there in the
But right now, we have two people.
Right, that's why, back to what we're saying here, this, and being out of agency, and not in our district,
Right.
can't use the funds, enter into a cost reimbursement. But I mean, that's a starting point for this, but yeah, they pay for it, we enter into a cost agreement that if there's
Where
other
is
failures.
Solvang on giving up their service and transferring it to us, and we could possibly annex that area in if they wanted it?
I do not know, I can give you an update that as we give you in the manager report. But first I'll start with, we had, it wasn't September 18th, it was prior to that. Last time Larry and Jason also came to that meeting, and when we discussed about this, and at that time, the former planning,
Holly.
Yeah, Holly, we were beginning to work on that, and move forward.
Because I know they were looking, they didn't have a problem with relinquishing.
Not at that time. And then since then, a week or two ago, I met with Joan Hartman, wanted to hear an update on our sewer situations, and last I know, had left it with her to have a similar discussion. I mean, because she was posing the idea that potentially, I told her, definitely go talk to LAFCO first, because that's where it needs to start. But that, yeah, we could have the sewer, annex that part in and leave the city services with the other. But I'm like, that's the LAFCO, Paul Hood thing. I have not heard back since. That was like 2 weeks ago.
Should we send Solvang a letter saying, are you interested in continuing with this? Or, because I think with their staffing situation, it's
falling way down.
It's fallen down on a priority list, and it's gonna get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
Because they have about this much staff now.
That is not my take, because I've been working with them on the wastewater treatment committee.
Yeah.
And we were concerned with doing the sphere of influence deal if we didn't have to.
Right.
And so it wasn't that they lost interest in it. I remember in our discussions, it was like, slow the roll. Is there a way we can do this without going through annexing and looking? And we were in the middle of also talking about other ways to work with Solvang, and that's not on the agenda. But the annexation is not off the table. It was just something that we would rather avoid. In the committee, we were just talking, can there ever be any elegant solutions that don't involve
LAFCO.
Yes, and LAFCO and 2 boards, and we just had a couple of committees going, hey, your pipe, our sphere of influence, let's just boom, do it. What's the big deal? So that's where that was. It wasn't that we don't, like we stopped talking or thinking about. We were just trying to find a way that was not so complex. So anyway, on that thing, so you were saying that maybe we could go back to Caltrans. I wasn't aware that you had spoken with Supervisor Hartman about it, but she doesn't control a special district, but she has tremendous influence in her district. And so if she's on board with something, then I think that it increases the likelihood of us being successful. If the city of Solvang is buying in, if our county supervisor thinks it sounds good, and this board does, maybe we can work together in a way. Yes?
So I just want to add something to what you're trying to portray here. So right now, we have these out-of-agency agreements, and that's because of the special case, but my understanding, especially with LAFCO, is like if everybody gets on board, so if I do a community thing, I would be willing to do it. Hey, can we get more people on this so we could help offset the cost for mainline? Then that would trigger a no. That would say, then no, you have to start annexing all of the Janet acres. So it's again, it's about incentivizing this. And right now, it doesn't make sense to try to incentivize to get the whole neighborhood hooked up. So right now, we have 2, possibly a third. But again, this homeowner here is not required to go inspect the tank. So just go, do I gamble? Because that's what I did. I gambled. I had a 6-year-old tank. This failed. $15,000 tank. All right, only lasted 6 years. It's a minor hole, but you're not allowed to repair. So normally that kind of a hole would just get repaired. And so I'm already in this 15,000. 6 years later, who would have thought that a tank would fail that long? So I think in this rare case, for this scenario, with this technology, we just come down the easement, at or near the power lines, well away from the 246. It doesn't have to be that deep. I think the installation cost comes way down. We're probably 1,000 feet.
Even if you had to bore.
And all 3 houses are there, and all the septics are in the backyard anyway, so as long as we can run along the back.
I talked to Caltrans first, when it first, I went up there to San Luis, and it sounded like that he was more upset that no one involved him. He was the very last guy. So in future projects, it might be good to contact them if there is an interest.
The guy from Caltrans?
Yeah, the guy from Pete from Caltrans, and he gave me an earful about it. And so, and his concern was if I let one guy do it, I gotta let 40 guys do it. So.
But with this technology, we can say we're gonna bring up one extension as long as we all, it might be spaghetti, but as everyone gets there, however they.
And that's what
and at any time.
Yeah.
So with this.
So we only need one saddle connection, right?
Well, no, that's what, that staff recommendation right now.
Okay.
Because, we touch it, all of a sudden it turns into $125,000.
Right.
And then it gets back to setting a manhole and
But
pavement and stuff.
couldn't the owners pay, well, I guess that's what you're talking about, right? The owners.
No,
pay.
we have to own it. That's.
Yes, own that.
But they could pay for
No,
it.
we pay that.
Yeah.
Well, right, that's what the
I
staff
got it.
recommendation is.
Right.
Okay, let's have some clarity. So just, Jeff, you're saying that the recommendation here is the cost of the manhole and main line is 54,000? Am I?
Yes.
Okay. And so what are we talking about here? And where does the 136,000 come
Well,
into?
that would include theirs, so yes, you're correct. Our portion would be the 150, or the 54,000, to get it out of the right of way.
To get it out of the right of way.
Yeah, because we have to do that back to the Caltrans thing.
Right,
you know?
So if we get it out of the right of way and then it's their responsibility, they can decide what they want to do to
Right.
connect to it.
Right, but that's back to the Caltrans thing, you know, and I can offline talk about what you're talking about there, that's always on
Sure.
hold and other things. But their last one is that, no, we're not gonna deal with anyone other than the public utility, we only do public to public.
How many
So-
homes are in Janet Acres?
But that is almost a false statement, because we've hooked up to stuff on Caltrans. It's just in certain situations, because of the 55 mile an hour is what he has a problem with it at Caltrans. So
No, I've got other information that he doesn't want all the pay, he'll destroy the pay, there's more to that.
Yeah.
I mean,
He
he's
doesn't
got a
have-
whole long list.
That's what I'm saying, but yeah, there is other highways that were hooked up right on the highway, you know.
Right.
Without the district, you know, we've done tie-ins to them.
If you want-
Just a second.
I would like my engineer to.
Yeah, we'll let the
That's deal.
engineer, and then I see that there's a gentleman, I'll get to you after we hear from the
I was
engineer.
just gonna say that, I think their big problem is because it's coming down.
The
a
steep,
really
yeah,
steep
correct.
hill.
And
Yeah.
shoulder width isn't,
There's
there's
not
not
enough
enough shoulder on it.
He talked about this a little bit earlier, but there's a sewer further up here at Meadowlark that
Yeah,
we've got Ys sticking out in Caltrans right away for
Right.
those particular
Right.
lots, but,
yeah.
you know,
So
we're not going up the steep hills,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
it's.
Yeah. But anyway, we have a very viable solution here with this technology. As a homeowner, I'm very interested in this. The last thing I wanna do is put in another $40,000-50,000 in this lousy septic tank. And then you guys come in 8 years later and say, oh, you gotta hook the sewer now. So, or whatever, I don't know, maybe the county will never get it figured out and properly incentivized so people have to hook the sewer, but, really interested in this, and I think, you know, if we can come work together and figure out how to get these, you know, handful of houses hooked up, that would be great.
Okay, and then there's a gentleman here with a question, yes.
Thank you. Hi, Brian Robinson. I live at 4501, the Zolke's Carlin, you know, I can thank them for Jeff and your staff. I know they've had a great, you guys have been super helpful, and I appreciate that. And I'm just kind of thinking, if you were gonna design a system to serve Janet Acres, everybody that's on the north side of the 246 side of Janet Way is all, I'm assuming you would want to gravity feed them into, not send them down to the collection area, the pump station down below where it says 83 parcels, I think, in Janet.
Okay.
And so I'm guessing a third of those or less are on in that situation, and it just seems, and maybe a quarter of those are down by the Meadowlark and everything. So they're, you know, they're easy. It's just the stuff north of entrance. And so I know these guys and potentially her are all on this, in this situation where it seems like you don't need 24 individual hookups into, and I think that's clearly what Caltrans is concerned about, is like having all of these. And so if you were gonna design a system and accommodate all those, you might only have one or two where we could hook up via the back lots. And I know there's the easement for the electrical. Caltrans's right-of-way actually goes up the hill. You can see the markers when we walk past our hedge. There's a Caltrans marker there, and it just seems like if it was a couple of hookups where then the properties could, you know, get in with laterals into some, you know, Ys off of that. I don't know if there's another way to approach, get another bite at the Caltrans apple. To your point, you know, I think there might be an elegant solution there, that at least the, because I think the system is great, but if we're all in sort of a available gravity thing in a situation, that it seems like.
So what I'm hearing is he's asking if we go back to Caltrans and rather than ask for the, and have this design at the entrance, say, hey, we put a manhole down here and stub the 8-inch, however we might, whatever would be public, up the hill, what would that cost?
Right, so we were not going all the way down to entrance.
Right.
It's-
Yeah.
To the, well, the 45, problem is the 55 mile an hour limit is like 100 feet past.
And they don't recognize the 45, because we kept saying that too, and they're like, no, it's 55.
I think you could get past that, though. If you submitted as the district, a plan, you could get past that because there, you'd be able to stop it.
But I think there's the key point that we have at that there are a couple out of districts and you're not in our district, so I can't take other people's money to
Right.
design it.
Design.
But
Yeah.
if the three of them, the three amigos to team together to pay for the boring down to 246.
Yeah, so the traffic and all that, I think it's a non-starter. I think just working at entrance, because there's a manhole cover right there.
Yeah.
And this high-density polyethylene line and a simple trench is the cheapest way. So,
And with that, all we need to do is get it out of whatever the right of way is
yes,
to a location that you can
right.
directly board however you wanna get there.
And I think we should just take a little time, maybe rethink this idea of trying to come down the easement. Going back to Caltrans, hey, would you allow us at least to come bring this 1.5-inch line down the easement?
Oh, up top, yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, I'm telling you right now, I don't think I don't think the Marcelo Water District, I don't think there's enough people interested. Again, we would be disincentivized trying to get everybody to hook up, because that, so they're not gonna let us tear up the street, they're not gonna let us come all the way down. I'm all the way down Entrance Road, they're not gonna let me do it, they're just not.
That was my take in working with the other wastewater committee thing, that if we tried to do the sphere of influence and if we did it transparently and try to get everybody to buy in, it's not gonna happen as quickly. We're not gonna
That's
get
what
to a
I'm trying to
solution,
grasp.
yes.
So,
Makes sense.
can we appoint a committee to work with them and also with you guys to go back to Caltrans and submit a plan? And are the three, you said it, the three amigos, willing to pay for that plan? Because we can't do it out of our funding because you're not in our sphere of influence.
I already did a plan for $3,000 with an engineer to go down to the Caltrans highway there,
Yeah,
and now that's worthless.
right.
Well, maybe this is something that we can talk about in the wastewater committee, instead of doing a new committee.
Yeah.
To answer some of these questions, since they are technically in Solvank's sphere of influence. And we have talked before about sharing this responsibility somehow. Is that not on the table?
If I may, the big one's Caltrans.
Right.
And really back to, my recommendation is, once again, how do we spend the money? But then escalate it slowly, because, they hold and wield great power. So we don't want to like be bringing board members in and all that yet. You save that for later. I think we reapproach them with some other ideas if the board's open to us spending some money on that. And then that leaves that so that you can escalate if need be. But,
There's already a manhole right there at the end of the entrance. You wouldn't have to stub up maybe 15 feet, depending which way you're facing, take a 90-degree turn and then you can connect to any.
But it's in the
Three
road
houses
and
are all
various
in
things
line,
like that,
so-
but,
So how much money are we talking about from our district to study this?
probably not much, huh? $1,500 to do that.
It'd be a simple plan to put together.
I think
Yeah.
we
It'd
can
be really easy.
front that money as long as it's legally, we're allowed to do it.
Well, that is,
And then able to connect, recoup.
well, that would be
What's-
what the board would decide, how much we want to authorize. And I see, you have that thoughtful look on your face, Mr. Battles.
That's why I'm deferring to him.
Yeah.
$15,000, so you have, $15,000 of my money already.
If there can be an agreement by the property owners that that'll be their cost, you could take the $15,000 that's already on deposit perhaps and apply it towards this design? Is that?
Well, that was capacity fees or something.
Oh, I see, okay.
Well, we need to have to clarify what it was.
You could have an agreement for reimbursement of cost and then just defer that until.
Well, those 15,000 included a saddle connection, and I think both homeowners, I thought, already paid it. I don't know if he's paid, so we don't need 2 saddle, we need 1. So there's a huge cost that's gonna come back to you guys, because we only need 1 saddle. So I think it's
You
kind
don't
of a
even need a
loss.
saddle, you can just bore into the.
Well, however, it is still some type of connection to the mainland, right?
It seems to me, just listening to this, that this is working pretty well with staff.
Yeah, we want to keep it at the staff level.
Yes,
Yeah,
and that's what I'm saying.
Staff level.
At this point, can you guys continue to work with our staff and then come back to the board when we have something, and then in the meantime,
Do we need to authorize a dollar number for you?
Well, that's kind of, I think we're getting some consensus here, but those were the concerns that, yeah, Caltrans said not with that. So back to this, either we call it off and say we can't do it, or yeah, continue to work with them and,
I think we need to continue to work with them as,
yeah.
and see what we can work out with them to,
So,
what does the rest of the board feel?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay, should we say
I'll work with Rick and then we'll work with
a
Mike
dollar
and then
amount?
give it.
that's why I was waiting to see if Rick, do we need to give you a dollar amount to authorize it for staff, or can we just agree the board has consensus that we want staff to pursue this? Do we need to have a cutoff amount? We don't want them to spend $1 million doing it, even though that's,
I think you can authorize staff to continue to work on this without putting a cap on the amount of staff time to the extent that the district is going to be advancing funds, because it's an expenditure for service outside the district. I would say it would be appropriate to have formal board action saying this is the dollar amount that we're willing to advance, and it's subject to having the property owners agree in advance that they're going to reimburse us when the project goes forward.
well, just off the top of my head, I'm liking that $15,000 amount. Does that seem like that's enough?
Or too much?
Right?
Staff?
Well, these guys are talking about 1,500 and now we have 15,000.
No, I agree.
Well, I just want,
That's
they don't
what
want
I'm
to
trying
cap
to figure
it so
out how-
low that they have to come back to a meeting. The problem is, if we put it at 1,500 and it's 2,000, then it's talk to us in December and then we'll get back to you in
Right.
January. So I want to put enough in there. Do you think 5 will do it?
All right, so
So
let's
it's
say
called-
7.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
covers
are you
it.
making a motion? to-
Yes, I'm
okay,
making a motion.
to authorize staff to spend up to $7,000 to work on the solution for the Jan and Acres out-of-agency boats.
Subject to an agreement for reimbursement.
Yes.
And then we would need a second.
I'll second.
Who seconded?
Director Mueller.
Okay, so the motion includes, a reimbursement agreement?
It's a different kind of, I mean, it's not the kind of reimbursement agreement that we sometimes talk about, but it could be a simple letter agreement or something like that.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion by Director Beard and a second by Director Mueller to authorize staff to continue working with the property owners in January Acres and spend up to $7,000 and
working with
Develop-
Caltrans, right, working with Caltrans.
and develop an agreement with the property owners? Rick?
Well, we have
Agreement
an
with
agreement
Caltrans,
now.
to get an approval from Caltrans and,
You get the
Yeah.
approval from Caltrans.
We just need a permit. All we need is a permit from Caltrans.
Yeah, that's what's on the.
The permit goes off of the dollar amount that it takes to hook up to them.
But I'm thinking that more what we're looking for is a solution
yeah.
for the out-of-agency.
Yes, right.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're seeking a
Targeted
solution.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say after solution, but that seemed like a good word to go there.
Okay, so roll call vote, Director Redford?
Excuse
Doing
me?
a roll call vote on the motion?
Yes.
Director Beard?
Yes.
Director Jones?
Yes.
Director Mueller?
Yes.
Director
Aye.
Deliver? Motion passes?
All right.
Excuse me, sir?
Yes, sorry, just one follow-up question. So in the entranceway proposal in the package, it was 150-ish.
It was 54 for the getting it out of the way.
Right, and then, I'm sorry, I thought there was some 150,000.
There was
130,
136.
yes.
Right, so that was the cost of these units.
Oh, they're,
In addition to your
Down,
cost.
down the line.
And the line, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are seeking a solution, folks, and it's gonna happen.
Let's hope
It
so.
is. I am an optimist. I think where there is a will, we can make it happen.
Where there's a will, there's a family fighting.
All right. So with 7E, this is discussion and direction on correspondence we received from Quail Valley Road.
Oh, okay, you're the gentleman from Quail Valley.
Yeah, hi.
Okay, you are the last neighbor of the neighborhood, so I hope that waiting through all this discussion was informative in some
No, it's been
ways.
very informative, and honestly, it's a discussion that many of my neighbors are not aware of, and a problem they don't know they have. My name's Carl Johnson, I live at 2936 Quail Valley Road. So I'm right on the edge of the sphere of influence for the Community Services District. It's right
Up this way.
right here, yes, next house down. I would like to say I'm here out of a sense of civic engagement and responsibility, but I represent the nightmare scenario. I can't flush my toilet. My house was built in 1972. We have a couple of dry wells that were marginal when we bought the house 5 years ago, and they failed. So now I'm looking at the very real likelihood of having to spend $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 on an on-site waste treatment plant, which number one, as has been pointed out, is going to require maintenance. Number two is not the right thing to do. I want to get my effluent off the property and into a municipal system. And incidentally, this is a new journey for me. This has only happened within the last month. So I'm trying to get up to speed on, what is affecting me, what are the laws and the regulations. And I've been getting a bunch of different opinions from a bunch of different people, and not all of them agree. The only thing they agree on is it's going to be really expensive. And I've got septic pump contractors saying, hey, we can put in something for you for 15 grand. We've got other people saying it's got to be a 3-phase on-site treatment thing, it's going to be 60 grand. From my point of view, a system like this, a pressurized system, and if it's going to cost $12,000, if it's going to cost $17,000, if it costs $20,000, I'll write a deposit check right now. I'm all in. This on-site waste treatment system, advanced treatment system, is crazy. I'm just a homeowner, and I can't afford that, and it's not the right thing to do. And so I'm in a tough position. It's encouraging to hear that our friends at Environmental Health Services are willing to talk about what my options are. But my request is that as a board, you include people on the west side of Refugio in these conversations, because, like I say, it's a problem that they don't know that they have. And most people think, if they haven't been watching the news, now I've been kind of, vaguely aware of what's been going on, but if your dry well fails, you put in a new one, $12,000 or whatever, done. But no, you can't do that. And not everybody's getting good information about what the county will allow and what the state will allow. So, if I were to approach my neighbors and say, if you have to put in a new drainage system, it is going to cost $50,000 or more dollars. Or if we can find a way to, as a group, buy into the municipal system, it's going to be much less. But it's a problem that you have, and you don't realize it yet because your system hasn't failed. My request is, how can my side of the road get in on the possibility of a municipal sewer system and connecting it to a gravity-fed system is fine. I just want a municipal system that I can hook into.
And it's Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
I think you probably heard in talking to the people in the other two neighborhoods, that's one of the concerns we have as a board, is servicing the people on the west side of Refugio and how we're going to pay for it and be accessible to the greatest number of homes for our investment. And that's what these two gentlemen have been tasked with, trying to figure out the financials of it. But we absolutely hear your concern and the problem. I'm interested in what the other board members have to say, listening.
I'm familiar, I know right where your property is, right on the curve setback,
Yeah.
number 3, right? know it well. You're in a low spot, which puts you at a disadvantage immediately.
Yes.
I would guess, I would think if you can muster up a couple of neighbors, people are interested who feel similar to how you feel, get them over here. We just kind of build up some energy and build up a support system for it. One out of, you're at least a quarter mile away, if not farther than the nearest main.
Well, the closest one is the end of Deer Trail.
That's a quarter mile from you?
I don't know. It's
Yeah.
probably-
That's a ways to go.
Yeah.
For one unit. So in order to be efficient and effective here, we need more, quite candidly, but just to cut to the chase. We need more support to get you what you guys need. So at some point, we need to communicate to you guys, or you guys need to communicate to us, which would probably certainly carry more weight to me if you guys come to us saying, hey, we would like to get more information, and we start a relationship, communications, giving you the information that we have, and get you guys going, talking, meetings, and as you saw tonight, we're real close with Horizon. That's not to say we couldn't be real close with you guys, but we do need the support, because if we do it for Horizon, we do it for you with minimal support. What happens when the guy on the other side of Deer Trail comes in and says, hey, what about us? And our funds are going down. We have to manage that very effectively. And so, like I said, we want to help, but I think we need support from you guys to come in and start ringing our bells, if you will.
But if you look at the recommendation here, it says exactly what you're saying. Mr. Johnson is here tonight, and it is our duty under our new policy for public outreach. And once again, we're all new here, and we're figuring some things out and trying to be more effective at getting people involved before we tell them this is happening. So this would be the appropriate trigger to contact people in that entire area to see who else may need help.
And if I could, it would help if the board perhaps could put together an information package with hard facts, like, no, you cannot put in a dry well. Or if you are going to replace your leach system, it's going to require an on-site treatment.
If I may, that's environmental health's responsibility. We don't certainly want to step on their toes. They are the experts.
Okay.
They are the experts.
I'd love to be in touch with them to get some of that information.
Well, yes, the two guys are here tonight, and because, sir, I'm sorry, I'm really bad with names. I'm just looking at you thinking environmental health. Yes, Larry. That this is an opportunity where we can work together. And since you do targeted mailers to people.
And the easiest way for us to work with that is if there's already a community association, homeowners association, or something like that we can go in and talk about septic issues. And that's where we would focus, septic issues. And our focus would be, you got something that's working, you don't want to take care of it. It's a different game now. But that also then triggers the discussion about sewer options. Most of the communities we work in, sewers are not an option. We really are talking about long-term future. But I think when folks begin to understand that they have a long-term interest, well, a lot of times people don't care about that, but there are a few that do. But if you can, working together, we can begin to at least try to get accurate information out to folks, and then that might get them motivated. So the first question is if you have a community association, or if you even have an informal network and set something up, we can visit. Yeah.
That'd be fantastic. And I have one other point. In your discussions about whether to go with a gravity-fed system or a pressurized system, my guess is that for the people on my side of Refugio, that there are many more hills and it's further away, a gravity-fed system is going to be prohibitively expensive. So when you make that decision, please take into account the people that are on the edges of your sphere of influence, because it makes a difference how and whether we'll be able to connect to the system.
So I can speak to that. When we did our sewer study, we were able to get a gravity sewer all the way to Quail Valley and Deer Trail, to that intersection. I know you're put on the downhill
I'm just 3 houses down.
So I
Point,
think,
Jeff, point where he is for me again.
I think the first couple of houses in on Quill Valley could still drive,
Third,
but I think you're just beyond that, so you're gonna have something like this no matter what.
What,
But I think if the gravity system will make it all the way up there.
on the map on the website, I'm within the dotted line, so.
Correct, you're in our district now.
Okay,
Right.
so I'm within the district.
You're
but not-
annexed in now,
Yeah,
yes.
you're in it.
Yes.
Okay.
But we don't have
So we don't
a
have-
main line to
So
serve
they're
everyone in the
different
district,
than-
yeah.
Yes, that's why we annex everybody, that way we can,
Okay, so
Have a
he's
clear-
annexed in.
yeah,
Horizon,
Janet is not.
Janet isn't, okay.
Right.
That's,
so he's
That's-
annexed in, that's why,
right,
Yeah.
okay.
And this is part of why it's so important to figure out where we put our lines for people to be able to get there. And we want to do it in a smart way,
and we've already done that, we have that plan. That
okay?
was done some years ago.
And so our current plan, how will our current plan help this individual gentleman?
I'd say there's two options. One is if the gravity line up in Horizon is the preferred option, then that line would eventually extend up to Quail Valley.
And when you say eventually, does that mean in 1 to 3 years or in my lifetime?
Well, it's back to you guys and your funding mechanisms.
Yeah, it
Okay.
depends on how many people.
But
want
good
it.
to understand that.
Because- In
when
fact, I'll
we
interject,
meet.
remember I brought you that we have bonding, great bonding potential, and other things.
Yes.
So we can do all of this in one fell swoop, and if everyone's on board, bond it. So I mean, it can happen soon, it's really up to the board and their desires and that tipping point with the amount of commitment.
It's up to the board after we get input from the people, and it's tricky, because some people here made the point that, well, my neighbors, they're not gonna go for this. But there's more and more new people buying homes that want this option. So you guys have a tricky committee, the two of you.
Thanks.
Well, it is, it's very important.
I just
Yes,
want to remind you, once sewer is available, once sewer is available and they're within 200 feet, we can't issue a permit to do even repair. So that's just something to consider.
Yeah.
So if we have somebody install this system and he puts his little force main past a couple of homes to connect to our line, now all of a sudden these people cannot repair it?
It depends on if that line's, actually, yeah, sewer would be available if they can tie into it, then we couldn't issue a permit.
You would be in the
If
driver's.
it's a public line.
You guys
Yeah,
would be in
as
the
long as-
driver's seat on that. If it's a public line, it's one you own, and you say sewer service is available, then we don't issue a permit, you connect.
But,
There's another thing that I've observed in watching this sort of thing happen, is even though you might have 25, 30, 40% buy-in, and you may have 40% absolute opposition, up until the time you put the line in the ground. Once the line is in there in the street, people say, well, fine, okay, I'll give up my septic system now.
yeah.
So particularly if you have financing terms for people to be able to pay for 20 years to do the installation. I've seen that many, many times where, hell no, never. Now the line's there, okay, where do I sign up?
are you making fun of me?
Exactly.
No,
No, I'm kidding, because that's me, like, I don't want it, but then I adapt, and my
Yeah.
life goes on happily ever after. Yes, I agree with that. Yes, Wendy?
If you guys have something like in writing, or you can draw up something, we can send it out to all the property owners with like your facts, if you guys want.
I find it's a lot easier to have a dialogue, because there's so many nuances. You've heard a lot of that with your sewer stuff, and we can put information together, but the best thing would be at a community meeting or something where we could actually talk. And we could support that with written stuff, but explaining some of that makes a big difference to people.
The discussion surrounding the annexation of our neighborhood had a lot of misinformation associated with it. So now that that's a done deal, I think it would be great to have an open dialogue with,
Well, and we can help facilitate too, because now you're annexed as part of our district.
yeah.
So we have this room, you're theoretically part of it.
Your family.
Well, I'd be happy to start canvassing my neighbors, and if you gentlemen would be a contact, I think, for me, it's a pressing issue. For them it is, but they don't know it.
I've encountered that a lot, not in their interest this year. And I've had situations where people have gone ahead and fixed their septic, because they couldn't, neighbors interested, And then a year later, one of the neighbors attacked us, hey, are you still thinking about sewer? Well, no, I spent my money, because the systems all fail at different times.
Right.
Yeah.
Although what year was your home built?
1972.
That's, there was a lot of building going on in the neighborhood during that period, and so I know a lot of young people, of my kids' friends who have bought into that neighborhood, and yeah, it's gonna be a problem if it's not already.
Yeah.
Okay, well, did we satisfy your need and your questions are answered?
Yeah, and I'll be contacting you guys.
Well, and actually back to that was more of the staff recommendations back to the soon-to-be adopted here later in the meeting, community interest matters. That's what we referenced with that, to do that same sort of outreach and just like we've been doing with Horizon, continue to build upon what that board foundation is and mail out all of those and then work with Environmental Health Services to utilize this room to bring all those people in. And just like with Horizon, we went door to door too and handed that stuff out so nobody can say they didn't get it. And, use every means possible to let them know something's happening and we're having multiple meetings.
Well, if you have a meeting here, a good suggestion, maybe, you tell me, would be to have the two gentlemen on the committee trying to work out the financing formula, because then we wouldn't worry about Brown Act stuff, but we would have a couple of board members that were actually hearing and then are gonna make a recommendation.
Yeah, so
At least one of you here, I know.
Well, and that's what we're
Oh,
looking
yeah, no problem.
That's what we're looking for, Director Jones, is make that into a motion or, tell staff to include the, whatever committee they're going to be, reach out to everyone and work with health services to facilitate, at least two community outreach meetings like that to gain and garner the support or lack of support for whatever it might be and then have that discussion. I mean, that would be a
Well,
suggested motion to you.
Okay, well, or consensus, I think, on this board directing staff to do outreach regarding Quail, is it Quail Valley? Is that what is it still a HOA?
No, not anymore, but it was a neighborhood.
Yes, I think it was a HOA many years ago, but that group of people need to be notified specifically, and as it moves forward, there may be, the whole district needs to know what's going on there. But for right now, just to find out how many people in Mr. Johnson's neighborhood.
And then include, or just come back or include the committee?
Well, this committee is tasked with the financial formula.
The wastewater committee then?
Well, I would say whatever the appropriate committee is.
We should just bring it back to the board and then we can make a decision from there.
Okay, well, I like having somebody from the board here when the community is talking because it helps the board make the decision. So you can pick one of us, I mean, however you want to do it. But how about if you let staff know, if you send us the same information, we should get it anyway. Well, no, because you're not sending it district-wide.
I mean, we can copy that, that's easy, but it's back to who do you want to show up?
Well,
I think,
it could be the wastewater committee, or it could be these two gentlemen I don't even know what your committee name is, finding the right financial investment committee. I don't know what the name of the committee is.
or you could do just the ad hoc, including the same members in it.
Yeah.
And call them that, because once again, it has a beginning and end to this. 2 meetings and we report back to the board with what we find out from homeowners, present them with similar information.
Are you saying to establish another ad hoc committee in addition to this financial one?
Whatever works.
Or maybe just the Horizon Drive Committee and the other could be the Quail Valley Committee.
Yeah.
So separate ad hoc?
Although, I am thinking that this committee was tasked with finding out what the formula is to apply to any new situation. So I really want to divide it neighborhood to neighborhood because we're trying to wrap our head around the big picture for the valley and how we're going to proceed in a way that makes sense for everyone.
Yeah, the format should be universal on how we do it, not just one street, but everybody. I think that would cut through the chase, give us guidelines so we can get moving on it, as opposed to each time we have a different street. Well, what do you want to do here? I think we just have a protocol, we follow it, It'll expedite everything over time, I think.
So does that mean that we pick one system so that, like, do we pick this system and then we stick to this system? Or do we have gravity part of it, which would be different cost? I mean, to build versus this system.
I think it's more.
We end up with a lot of different
we're looking
numbers.
more on like, we need a percentage of hookups or a percentage of cost recovery immediately to, is that what we were?
You have two different
That's what I
costs,
remember.
is what I'm saying.
Well,
Is
it's
that
just-
gravity system's gonna cost you a heck of a lot more, maybe.
Well, it's gonna be on a street by, I think it's more on a cost recovery
Yes.
type system, cost recovery instead of on the system itself.
Alright,
You know,
Just
we're trying to set
general
some guidelines for that,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so that it covers us financially, gets the job done for the constituents. That's where you guys, that's juggling, and I want to wish you guys a lot of luck with that.
I hope you're good at this.
Well, you know, I actually think that your skill sets complement each other
Yeah.
nicely in that way. I really do, because I think that you see a very big picture of the valley
Yeah.
and have a long history here, and I think David is very good with numbers. So I think you'll,
Yeah.
well, I'll just say you're better than me. That might not be great, but you're
Yeah.
better than me. So I think that the two of you will figure out a way to approach how we expand our services in a way that makes sense for us. Us being the Santa Ynez Valley, and more specifically our district and what's annexed in. Okay. So are we satisfied with that agenda item?
So there's board consensus?
Oh,
to
yeah, no, we're not.
Do
Okay.
outreach to the Quail Valley residents?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay.
I appreciate your time.
Okay, well, we
Thank you.
appreciate you coming
Thank you,
in.
Jason,
Thank you,
greatly
guys.
appreciated.
Hey, we're usually out of here by 8, guys, sorry. This is a long one, we had a lot of little neighborhoods. Thank you.
Greatly
Larry, and what is it,
Jason.
Larry, Mr. Johnson, and Jason. Okay, I'm working on the names, thank you. Engineer, I want to call you Mike, am I right?
You got it.
Yay! Okay, now, we shall move on to,
You're back to 7A.
okay, well, I thought we were gonna
Oh.
do F and then A.
You can do it.
Okay.
You're right, that's what we agreed on, sorry.
Okay, so if everybody has had an opportunity to review the meeting last week when we went through the policy and procedures, which, thank you, you guys are putting a lot of time in, and I really want to think that it's going to get easier and not be as time consuming as we go on with stuff, but maybe I'm exactly wrong. Let's see, what is F?
Yeah, you want me to go ahead and start with it?
Excuse me.
Well, Rick,
Yes. Go.
You can always hear
Joe,
me.
I remember your name because it's just like Joe. Yeah,
It's
well,
like a cup of
Mike
coffee,
was
you
easy
know?
too, yes.
I know.
But I also really enjoyed your presentation.
Yeah. Very nice.
Okay, item F, at the special special meeting on November 13th, the district board of directors reviewed and discussed the draft amended and restated board policy manual prepared by district legal counsel. The amended and restated board policy manual incorporated, 1, the notification procedures developed by the district's public outreach ad hoc committee, 2, the changes recommended by district legal counsel in 2009 when the board policy manual was originally adopted, and 3, additional changes that were recommended by district staff. At the conclusion of the special meeting, the board directed district staff to bring back a revised version of the policy manual addressing the additional changes that were discussed at the meeting. The board also determined that the district should adopt Rosenberg's rules of order to supplement the provisions of the policy manual. District legal counsel has prepared a revised draft of the amended and restated board policy manual reflecting the requested changes. District legal counsel has also prepared a proposed resolution providing for the adoption or to adopt the amended, restated board policy manual and Rosenberg's rules of order. So the recommendation is to consider the revised draft of the amended and restated board policy manual and determine if any further changes are required. If no changes or if only minor changes are required, adopt the resolution to, one, amend and restate, and restated board policy manual, including any minor changes requested by the board, and two, Rosenberg Rules of Order. If significant changes are required, or the board requires additional review time, continue the matter to a future board meeting. So with that, back to legal counsel and President Jones.
I did want to throw in one thing. I was able to find the meeting where we agreed to use, but we did not vote on the Rosenberg's rules, and that was in May of 2017.
How come you didn't remember that?
Good investigative work.
Well, no, it's very good to go back and read meeting minutes.
So is there action to follow them in the future or adopt them, or just
Well,
consensus to use them?
Director Higgins, oh, hold it. As part of board policy and procedures, Director Seymour would like to adopt Rosenberg's Rules of Order. And then there was no action taken, it just said Seymour would like
So there's an
to.
indication that it's something we should do, but we didn't actually formally do it.
Yes, and I had a memory of the meeting from my point of view, and so going back and reading minutes was interesting. I know, too much time on my hands. No, I didn't really want to do that today, I had other things to do.
Well, that's helpful.
But yeah, anyway, it gets back to how long it's been since you've been sitting on the policy and procedure changes. So I would like to say good work to the board. I know it seems like just slow and tedious, but we're checking some things off, so that's good. Does anyone have any questions on the Rosenberg's rules or on the policy manual that we went through? We'll probably find something that we don't like or that doesn't work for us, because that's another thing that I find in reading through minutes. I remember a lot of history, and you guys don't have much history yet. You're getting history. Tonight you gained double the history that you would normally get in a meeting, because this was a long one. But I like what we've accomplished. So with that in mind, if somebody would like to make a motion, just know that this is not in stone. If there's something in here that doesn't work for us, we can revisit it and the board can change it if a majority wants to change it.
You want a motion? I'll
Yes.
make a motion that we accepted the revised document.
I think the motion would be to adopt the resolution.
The
resolution adopts the revised policy
Revised
manual and
policy,
approves, and also Rosenberg's rules.
Wasn't that what I said?
Close.
No, I want to make sure we got that right, so 7F, and the recommendation, Director Deambra has made a motion that we adopt the revised,
Adopt resolution number 19-11,
okay,
which adopts the amended and restated board policy manual and Rosenberg's rules of order.
okay, so I have a motion to adopt resolution number 19-11, adopting amended and restated board policy manual and Rosenberg's rules of order. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Director Mueller seconds that, so Wendy can take a roll
Do a
call.
roll call vote. We have a motion by Director Deambra and a second by Director Mueller to adopt resolution 19-11, adopting amended and restated board policy manual and Rosenberg's rules of order. We'll do a roll call vote. Director Redfern?
Aye.
Director Beard?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Mueller?
Aye.
Director Deambra?
Aye.
Motion passes.
So I'll do a clean version and get that circulated.
Okay, thank you. That was 10 years of your life. Okay, now we're gonna go to A after F. I'm learning my alphabet. So 7A is approval of the budget to actual for fiscal year ending 6/30/19. So we will go to 7A. Did I get that right?
Okay, so with the budget to actual for for the fiscal year ending 6/30/2019. We'll do a summary unless you guys have specific questions. Revenue was up almost 13%. We budgeted 1.9 million, received 2.1 million. For the administration expense, we budgeted 297 and we spent 184, so expenses were down 62%. And for the building expense, we budgeted 22,700. We spent 17,391, so the expenses was 76%. For Buellton City, we didn't have a budget because we had just started that contract, but we spent $8,300 and we received $8,300 back from the city of Buellton. The operating expense, we budgeted $910,700 and we spent $736,000, and the percentage was 80% for operations. And with the reserves, we were able, which is revenue over expense, we were able to put in $553,450 in the reserves. And then the tribe revenue, we budgeted that we'd get 41,000, but we actually received $54,722, and that's a reimbursement of the cost that we spent for the tribe. And then their expenses was 82,600 is what we budgeted, but we actually spent $89,540, so we get that money back plus 10% on top of that. With the wastewater treatment plant, we budgeted the revenue is not there. So the for the tribe, the waste, yeah, the revenue.
Where are we in this? I don't think I'm following.
Anyways, so the total expenses for the wastewater treatment plant was $513,000, what we budgeted, and their expenses were down, so we actually spent $486,665, which is 100% reimbursed with a 5% overhead. Do you guys have any questions?
I do, but my brain isn't working.
Yeah, well, you can ask tomorrow.
So this, what's the bottom line here? Yay, we did better than we expected, or well,
We brought in more money and spent less money.
And you had a 500,000 additional for reserve money.
Yes.
About
And-
400, because we
and
budgeted
we'll-
100, yeah.
We'll get to reserves in item 8, and that money is allotted by a resolution policy, a reserve policy by resolution. So we'll get to that when we get to that item, which is next.
I make a motion, we approve.
Okay, so right now, we are considering a motion to approve, Director Beard has made a motion to approve budget to actual for fiscal year ending in 6/30/19. Do we have a second?
I'll second. You'll second? I'll second. All right.
You'll second.
Director Deambra has seconded the motion.
Excellent.
So Wendy?
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the budget to actual for the period 6/30/19. We'll do a roll call vote. Director Redford?
Aye.
Director Beard?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Muller?
Aye.
Director Blunt?
Okay, and now we're moving to item 8A, informational items, status of reserves for fiscal year ending at 6/30/19, so what we just looked at. So Wendy will
Okay, so
take that.
the revenue over expense gets put into the reserves per the resolution 1501 reserve policy. So the revenue to expense goes under the fund and replace expansion reserve, which is $553,450. And then the connection fees and the annexation buy-in fees, that's taken out of the revenue expense because that's allocated to the future capacity reserve. So if you look under the future capacity reserve, we have, we got $113,464 in capacity fees. And then in buy-in fees, we earned $14,944. So our overall total reserves is $4,001,018.
Okay, well, we end up being over $500,000. Is that what it is? Like 590,094? So that is we're up.
Yes.
Okay.
We're doing a very good job.
And yes, and that's what I was gonna say, and that is by design, and when you're doing your budget, you get skilled at making sure that you're not caught behind and that you're always trying to add to your reserve. And so this is a successful budget in that sense.
Yes. And that's one reason why we do the rate study, and we have been proactive in increasing the rates to cover the wastewater upgrade project. And when you see the 10-year capital improvement project plan, that also goes into that rate study and the budget to allocate the money to make sure that we don't end up owing more than what we have, so.
Well, I know it's asking a kind of a childish format, but I'm just trying to understand, because I think it's important somehow to what these gentlemen are tasked with doing, and it relates to what you're doing, is the big picture financial stuff, that you are moving us toward where we can pay as we go for our improving our infrastructure. No? So what happens when we are over this way? That doesn't help us out at all?
It does, but back to, if you remember back to the bonding and stuff, it's back to they require some coverage in there. So yes, going back 3 or 4 years, we started with a rate study, back these different placeholders I talked about. There's $5 million in there because we knew something was going to come. And now you're seeing come to fruition. At the moment, we've got the solving aspect on there, but we already started adjusting our rates 4 or 5 years ago, and now you'll be at the next phase of that when we have to update the rate study. So that's in place, and then, but the other aspect of it, back to what Bob's concerned about, is we don't drain that down, because they like that coverage. When you go back to bonding, they want to see bad years, they're still gonna get their payments wherever on Wall Street for 2 or 3 years while we go through a dip. So it puts us in a stronger borrowing situation, shall we say. So yeah, that's more accurate, because pay as you go, we're in the wrong business.
Okay, well, no, but just to understand, because this is something I know as a new board member, I am interested in how things affect my rate as a stakeholder in the district. So as somebody not on the board, just somebody paying my sewer bill, I want to think, oh wow, their revenue is up. Maybe they can do a rate freeze on us, or maybe we can get
Well, it's the opposite. But that's a good question. Back to, you're not sitting here and going to hear from us that we need to raise rates $20 a month like you're hearing from some of our neighbors, because we already are at that rate. Right now you're hearing, oh my gosh, why is ours are so low and yours are so high? Well, ours is so high because yes, we're 5 or 6 years ahead of that curve where we need to be. Back to, we have that bonding capacity of well over $4 million. So that's where we're at, and you don't have to look at your customers or anything and fill this room with an increase of $20 or $30 a month.
No,
it's going to be a $2 or $3 a month type of increase.
It comes back to like when I said for the Skyline Park, when I got there, they were $50,000 in debt, and now we have zero debt, and we've got $250,000 in the bank, and we did a reserve study, or we did a study and said, hey, we need to have $250,000 in the bank,
Exactly.
you know?
And one of the other ones that we've found out from our peer agencies, Montecito being one of them, that, you get wiped out in an emergency, you still need that cash. You might get reimbursed later someday from FEMA or someone,
Right.
but cash talks in emergency. So if you're gonna rebuild your infrastructure, as you heard me talk about a lift station, you're looking at $1 million.
Right.
Just round up and say a lift station $1 million, and if you only have $4 million, you can see how it evaporates quick.
Right.
But, so we're exactly what Director Beard's saying, so. And what's coming soon though, is we'll be able to go through this whole process again in the next rate study, and then go more line item by line item, and back to what you're saying, well, why are we doing that, and where does that yield in 5 years or 10 years, so.
Right.
Right, and keeping that happy balance, because I was unable, I had something else going on yesterday, but just the talk around town was about the possibility of them doing a rate freeze at the water district. So at some point, when we get really comfortable financially, sometimes you'll hear from people, it's like, well, what are you doing, building an empire? Like, stop raising our rates, you're already high. So I just try and be mindful of both. I'm glad we're really healthy. I think that's great, and I'm all for it. But I'm just trying to understand the big picture. Okay, so big picture is we're very healthy.
Yeah.
Nice job on that.
Thank you.
Okay, now we move on to 9 reports, manager's report.
I just covered I was called to the Hartman's office for a meeting, and other than that, it's just been, from that last meeting to this one, just getting ready for what you saw this evening, so. And we don't have the flows, we'll bring the flows and everything to this December meeting, because we didn't have time to compile that, so. Into my report.
Okay, and legal counsel's report.
I thought I'd mention new legislation AB5, which deals with how you characterize a worker as an independent contractor or an employee. This is an issue that's kind of touched on here a few times in the past. But by way of background, historically, the IRS had 20 tests for determining whether somebody was an independent contractor or an employee. And you look at this long list of tests and you sort of make a judgment. There wasn't like you had to meet all 20 tests. It was like if you met most of them, or you met the most important ones, you're going to be an employee. If not, you could be an independent contractor. So it looked at such things like, does the employer provide the employee or the worker with an office or tools or the other things they need to do their work, or does the worker provide all of those things on their own like a contractor would? Is there a set schedule? Is it a flat fee? Is it long-term? Does the worker work for a lot of other people or just this particular employer? And one of the most important ones is, what is the level of supervision? Does the employer direct how the work is going to be done, or just say, I need this done, you go figure out how to do it? So that was historically, and then the IRS reduced those tests down to 8. And then in 2018, the Supreme Court came down in California with a case involving a company called Dynamex, and it applied 3 tests. And it introduced a new test, which was, one of the tests was, the control and direction, which has always been the test. Another one was, is the person engaged independently in a trade or profession, they're working for other people. But the new test was whether the person is providing a service that's in line with the usual course of business of the employer. And the example they used was, if you're a clothing manufacturer and you hire a seamstress as an independent contractor, your seamstress isn't really going to be treated as an independent contractor. That seamstress is an employee because you're in the business of making clothing and you've just hired somebody who's a seamstress, as distinguished from hiring a janitor, to clean your premises, or a plumber to fix a pipe or something like that, where it's a completely separate, unrelated business. So that was the new test. But this Dynamex case only applied in the wage and order context, which is the area of law that determines what you pay in terms of minimum wages, maximum hours, meal and rest breaks, and that kind of thing. It didn't apply in other areas like under the unemployment insurance code for unemployment benefits, or under the labor code that deals with all kinds of issues. So it's somewhat limited. What AB5 did is come out and say now these tests from Dynamex are the law in California. It's not just a Supreme Court decision, this is actually a statute, and it applies to these other contracts as well. And what it has the effect of doing is making it harder to characterize a worker as an independent contractor, and more workers are going to now qualify as employees. Even though it reduced it down to 3 tests, it didn't really simplify things that much because there are lots of exceptions. So these tests don't apply at all for certain professionals, insurance professionals, physicians, surgeons, dentists, psychologists, veterinarians, lawyers, architects, engineers.
Anybody with a good
accountants.
lobby.
Yeah, yes. And in those cases, then you apply 6 tests from an earlier decision called the Borello case. And then it's broken down further. If you've got business-to-business contracting, where it's not an individual that's being hired, but a business like, an engineering firm, then the Dynamex AB5 tests don't apply if you meet one of these 12 requirements. So I don't want to get into that level of complication, but
I kind of do.
The take.
No, it was the hot
I'd be
topic
happy
at my party this weekend because we had some people that work doing film scores, and they're like, "Wow, California is just trying to make everybody into an employee. So if we're doing films for Marvel, we have to be a Marvel employee? No, we want to be." It's actually a trend, and it's something now. I'm eating in restaurants that don't take tips because, just as part of the changing, the evolving workscape.
Yeah, and I've got a good summary from another law firm's website I'd be happy to circulate. I think it lays out all the details of it, and I can provide that to staff and to the board members.
Well, I'm interested, I'm just kind of a nerd, but it is something people are talking about around me. Things are changing in that way, so I thought that was interesting. And I think maybe one of the reasons that had some allure as a report to you, Rick, is because I have been a longtime complainer about the board being made employees.
Yeah.
I am not an employee, so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we go to Secretary Treasurer's report.
I have nothing.
Okay, and are there any committee reports? I think they were covered in all our discussions that we had with the 3 different neighborhoods. Okay, and now we're going to move to closed session, but before we do, I would like to take a little break. Maybe it's a
If I could
5-minute
also
break.
mention, we
Yes.
should have an opportunity for public comments before we take our break and excuse the public, so if there's
You're right.
if there's some public left.
Are there any public comments before we break for closed session? I gotta stretch my legs.
Take a break and then,
Yeah, we'll be back at 9. I mean, I'm talking about 5 minutes.
so we should report that we took a break and then at 9 o'clock we'll move to session.
Yes.
Do I need to do something before I hit the ladies' room? Or am I good?
It'll be up to you.
I mean, as far as if I need to adjourn or state that we're going
No, I
on.
think
Okay.
I think you covered it by giving us a break.
Thank you. You turn it off.
As Community Service District meeting is now back in session at, I don't have my phone out, but it's 10:27 p.m. In closed session, we took no reportable action. So what else is there? That's it. Yeah, the session is closed.
Close the meeting.
Yeah, well, adjourned, but we've got that one last one.
Need to report the special meeting?
We'll just agenda.
Yeah, so we'll just.
Okay, we're back from closed session
Yeah.
of our regular monthly meeting, November 20th, 2019, and it was 10:27, back in session, and the only thing that we have left are tentative agenda items. And the horizon is coming back for sure. We will continue to discuss the solving wastewater treatment plant. Anything else?
Probably ought to knock out that saltwater or the other one.
Water softener?
Water
Yes.
softener ordinance.
Just back to the whole thing too, when I was looking at it earlier, okay, tired of looking at it, let's just get it off the list and for maybe January, so.
Okay. So, without further ado, this meeting is,
I still think we had discussed it at another meeting about putting it on the agenda for us to look at other options.
can we put, a very broad agenda item on there?
Yeah. Yeah.
That to continue to explore options, best possible solution for Santina's, district
18th,
for water treatment.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. So a meeting is adjourned at 10:29. Thank you.
I'm not late.
we did it.
It's a long window seal.
If we're employees, we're making way and we're making way.
I know, we don't, they get the rose, we get the thorn. It's like, if I'm gonna be an employee, I need a vacation.
Yeah. Oh, and we've seen him get your